Sort of coming chapter 10-20. While helping others to look at the pictures, Lu Chen asked with a smile in his heart. I met my senior brother in the outer sky before, and have you talked to my senior brother about the transfer of the authentic book of pills? If it is settled, you can get rid of the messenger. Qin Pingon took a large chopstick to pickle the meat and stewed bamboo shoots. He nodded and said, We've talked about it. Next time I go to Tongyi's house, I will send it to Taiping Mountain. In addition to the many authentic talismans contained in the authentic book of pills, Cui Dongshan also revealed the secret to his husband. In fact, the pages of the book itself are excellent talisman papers. In addition, Li Zixing's personal annotations in the book, more than 1,200 characters. If used to refine the characters, it can support a Luotian ceremonial offering sacrifice to 1,200 Taoist gods. Whether it is Shangzong Luopa Mountain or Qingping Sword Sect, it is more than enough to use it as a mountain protection formation. It falls into the eyes of the monks on the mountain. However, Qin Pingon has his own plans. Next time Taiping Shan officially holds a celebration, he plans to present this Taoist book and the great array of protecting the mountain as a gift to Huang Ting. A favor of drawings. After all, the incense legal system of Taiping Mountain and Tongyi's Hao came from the lineage of Ko Ming, the great headmaster of Baiyujing. Lu Chen turned his head and asked, Miss Pei, I want to ask you something. Have those two children clearly inherited their apprenticeship from their poor senior brothers? Previously, Pei Qian only said that Li Shixing wanted to take them with him to practice, and they were very particular about whether they maintain the old Taoism or change their teacher's line of teaching. In Su Enai Mountain in the south of Tongye continent, the genealogical cultivators Miao Jia and He Shou, one just entered the cave state and became a meek guest, and the other is a sword cultivator of the 4 states. Stay with Zhong Kuei and his party for a moment. If this is spread, no one would dare to believe it. Who is Zhong Kuei? Just talk about Pei Qian stopped the martial arts. What's more, there is a ghost immortal Yujin who fell from Ascension Realm not long ago. Of course, Lu Chen was very sure that it was true that they were trapped. If those 2 monks really had malicious intentions, they wanted to kill them and then they took action. They only said that Pei Qian was in a state of fisting like the protection of the gods. With the weak physique of those 2 monks, approaching Pei Qian with a murderous intent would definitely kill him. In any case, this pair of junior brothers and sisters from a small sect are all good luck, and they will have good luck if they don't die. As the old saying goes, the Dharma is fate, and a doctor will find a doctor without dying. Li Shixing was also accompanied by a porcelain man book boy named Cui Ci, who was not so worried because the teenager was already worried. Pei Qian stopped his chopsticks, shook his head and said, It seems that they did not officially apprentice with Mr. Li, at least temporarily. As for whether there is a long-term plan, I don't know. Lu Chen nodded with a smile. Thank you, Miss Pei. Pei Qian said, Master Lu is very polite. Senior and my husband are old acquaintances. If you have any questions, the junior will definitely know everything. Lu Chen smiled bitterly. The more Pei Qian taught the rules and etiquette, the more guilty Master Lu felt. Old acquaintances, this is a more ingenious statement. Lu Xianying and Dong Shuijing are old acquaintances of your master, and Xing Makushuan are old acquaintances of Qin Pingon? Just because Lu Chen currently has a list in his hand, the names on it are all monks who may follow Qin Pingon to visit Baiyujing in the future. In Luopao Mountain alone, there is Cui Dongshan, Mr. Xiaomo, whose real name is, and Bai Jing, who has a great hope of joining the 14th realm of Taoism. Tianma Jianxiu Miyu, who has entered the realm of immortals. Among my friends, there are Lu Xianying of Longquan Jianzong, Qi Jinglong of Taihui Jianzong, etc. If you add Pei Qian, the world will have a wedge. With Pei Qian, it means that the number of pure warriors will also increase. And every martial artist who is qualified to follow Qin Pingon to ask by Yujing is simply not enough to see. Must it be the beginning of the end? In Lu Chen's view, he does not talk about the final achievement of martial arts, but only talks about the quality of martial arts. The Qingming world's Yashanlin Jiangxian and Li Yefeng have worked hard, as well as Chao Xiai and Pei Qian here, who are on the front line. Less than one-handed number. In addition, Qin Pingon, the Qingshan dynasty's female national teacher by O, are actually a little worse than them. Qin Pingon just pretended not to notice the undercurrent between Pei Qian and Lu Chen and asked, The Qingming world is similar to Hehuan Mountain, how much? Lu Chen nodded and said, There are so many, the number is far more than Hauran, and the snake and Jayapanshan together are still a relatively common way to build roads in the Qingming world, but water is rare. To talk about Daoist Mountain like Falling Yuanshan and Wuding Mountain, the first time Qin Pingan saw it was during his travels in Beiju Luzhou. On the ferry, he once passed Jingguangfeng and Yuehua Mountain. The former inhabited it is accompanied by a group of golden-backed geese that are extremely difficult to be captured by Qi practitioners. The latter is entrenched by giant frogs. It is said that the two old ancestors of the golden-backed geese and the drumming frog have a deep relationship and have followed Li Zixing's practice over the years. Qin Pingan hesitated for a moment and said, "Among the 12 earthly branches of Dali, there is a female ghost named Zhou Xian, who is the behind-the-scenes shopkeeper of the Xianxia Inn in the capital. She is also a painter on the mountain known as the Bamike, and she can be regarded as Miaojia, the seniors on the mountain." Lu Chen heard the elegant meaning and said, "When I turn back to the poor road, I will tell my brother and let Miaojia, an anonymous disciple, have the opportunity to visit the capital of Dali." Today's Confucian scholar Li Zixing, after all, is not the former master of Bai Yujing. Although he can teach Miaojia some of the most exquisite Taoist methods, it is just that Li Zixing has mastered the 6 orifices. "I don't know anything about it." And the female ghost changed to Yen, even if the current realm is not high, but she was a painter cultivated by Xiuhu with the power of a country. She must have a good vision, and she has a few wonderful Taoism books at hand. Now Lu Chen is very curious and looking forward to it. When the teacher in charge returns to Baiyujing in the future, there will be a few anonymous disciples like Jinfeng Yulu and Miao Jia Hezhou around him. On the Fanwan mansion side, I just moved my hands and feet in the wine and the food was fine. In Pei Qian's field of vision, all the banquet halls were filled with pink lines, and there was a group of tiny flying midges. Sparrows, I don't know what kind of foreign objects, their bodies are illusory, they want to go in and out of the guests' faces, and the speed is extremely fast. At this moment it is like being wrapped into a zongzi. Pei Qian asked the master what this thing was, not to mention ghosts like Bai Mao and strange spirit trainers like Mrs. Pipa who could even deceive some gods. Qin Pingan couldn't say why, but it was only the pedantic headmaster Lu who helped to solve the puzzle. It turns out that this is an old handicraft that is not common nowadays. It belongs to a side door technique. First, make vinegar in a fairy-style method and post the word "you" outside the jar. After a series of secret procedures that need to endure for a long time, a kind of vinegar bug called chicken can be born when the altar is opened. Stir-frying vegetables with this vinegar can make long-term eaters overturn the jar of vinegar. But this is only the first time. After a procedure, the midge-like flying insects are then immersed in the ink, and then 1 or 2 pieces of love silk, spit out by the spring dream spider, are used to refine them into ink ingots. On May 5th, inscribe the word "spring travel," and then take a pair of idiots and resentful women in the market, and they signed a contract with a certain temple of each other. Erased the text, took only the paper, studied the ink of spring tour, wrote a full text of the word "ing," burned the paper into ashes, put it in a bowl of water, and then let a woman who is in love take this talisman water. This woman will be in a spring dream some night, she will not realize it, but she will suddenly open her mouth and spit out a thorn that only feeds on the dream magical spring orioles, alias textile girl. Finally, if this warbler is domesticated, they can weave a net of love for their master. In addition, wine is a color medium which has no miraculous effect. The warbler flies swiftly like a shuttle on a loom, coming and going, and weaving is not easy. Stop and finally put up a pink tent with a hidden miasma and a beautiful spring, so the fox charmer with a higher morality has always liked to play this trick. As for whether to use it as a cheer for the spring night, or as a harmful means of harvesting yang and replenishing yin, it depends on the intentions of the fox fairy. Qi practitioners in the world, especially Yamazawa Yeshio, are busy running around the landscape and the market all year round. They have their own reasons for being busy. Just collecting all kinds of strange materials and repeatedly studying various side door techniques is enough to make the necessary. The loose cultivator, who does everything by himself, can't help but sigh that there is no end to learning. To break this fascination array, the general landscape barrier breaking talisman is not very useful. It is simple and simple. The monks who are deeply involved in it only need to light wormwood and pine branches. But the problem is that the average monk will be full and support, carrying a few wormwood and a few pine branches with him. Qin Pingan said, "Is this Yu Chuanji building a romantic tent? Is she still the kind of corpse who practiced the color alchemy?" Yanzhou and the sewing man who is good at killing, skinning and refining into talismans, as well as Dushur, plague god and poison immortal, are all one of the 10 kinds of evil demons selected by Howren World. Once the whereabouts of these monks are discovered, they will all end up. It won't be much better. Confucian academies in all continents will definitely send gentlemen and sages to participate in the search. The most exaggerated one in history was a mountain dynasty in Wuxia. The 2 plague gods used migratory birds and river fish to spread the plague respectively, turning the surrounding 6 countries into a large area without living people in just half a month. An academy mountain leader was also secretly attacked and killed by the poison immortal. Finally, the Confucian temple teamed up with Tianyu Dongtian and the old sword fairy Zhou Xian to kill the poison immortal. In fact, the immortal evil cultivator who entered the Ascension realm did not die, but in the form of a ghost and immortal, most of the remaining souls fled to Huangquan Road and started anew, hoping that one day he would return to the world and see the sun again. Lucian shook his chopsticks. No, this earth immortal fox immortal has only learned the fur of the dazzling alchemy. I guess it was a coincidence on the way to practice and I picked up this book on the side of the road, but because I didn't have the guidance of a master I gave it to her. He has cultivated a crooked technique. If Yu Chunji is a serious corpse, the old man with a bulging belly and a warrior with a golden body, right? If he dared to wander in the town he would have been kidnapped by Yu Chunji long ago. Every day when I get out of bed, I have to squat under the wall and bask in the sun. If my body is a little bit weak I become a human being and I can't see us. Anyway, few people in this banquet room have butts, and even Steward Yu went elsewhere to make a toast, and there were 2 idle maidservants who were seduced by the young Daoist priest. Lucian helped the 2 beauties who brought chairs and sat beside them, looked at their faces and said some inside stories on the mountain like why those with a bamboo nose like a bamboo knot should not practice thunder technique, stunned them for a moment, and started turning over to help with palm reading. They were probably maids who were highly regarded by Yu Chuanji and Fan Wanfu, so they were all given the surname Yu. They had a plump body and thin robes with gold-embroidered phoenixes, but their waists were too thin. A thin and graceful, emerald green dress. At this moment, Lucian held the slender hand of the plump beauty with one hand, and helped her count the number of white crescents on her fingernails, and then put her palms to the ground and her fingers upturned. The young Taoist priest glanced at the curvature of the back of the woman's hand, and the Taoist priest nodded. He didn't say anything, just let her clench her fist and look down at the word, earth, formed by her palm lines. The Taoist raised his head and congratulated this sister for practicing the technique of worshipping the moon, and then told her where to go. When to pick up the date and time of the moon soul. The Taoist spit all over the place, and the beauty whose slender hand was always in the Taoist's hand seemed to be flowing, but in fact it was perfunctory, only when she was bored. I heard people say books. Pei Qian turned to look at Master. Qin Pingon was full, picked up a dried longan from the fruit bowl and whispered, "It doesn't sound reliable but in fact every sentence is true." Just like Jiang Chu, if it wasn't for Qin Pingan's talisman, then even if Jiang Chu could practice in Luopao Mountain his situation would be similar to that of Gong Ludao Guochuanxi, as if his aptitude was extremely poor. There are too many things like Jiang Chu, who has never climbed the Luopa Mountain to practice talisman. This is the case with Yu Yi, who clearly has the life of cultivating and worshipping the moon, but has no such luck. Bai Mao introduced with a smile. This is made of dried longan from Xia Luling. Xiaojing, try it. The medicine book says that this is a concentrated product, suitable for all ages, and it can nourish the mind and eyesight. Do you think? A kind of fruit, can be named longan, how can there be no capital? Pei Qian thanked Palace Master Bai and picked up a dried longan. Hearing this, the young Taoist hurriedly grabbed 2 longan and put them in his mouth and said vaguely, Sister Yu, Sister Rong Yu, Pindao thinks that after you tonight, the time and the 8 characters coincide. Unsurprisingly, good luck is coming. Their surname is Yu and they are beauties with their own charms, so they are very suitable for Yu Meiren, which is the name of the lyric and brand name of Jiafang's music. Yu Yi still had a hint of sadness on his face, bit his lip and said in a low voice, Xianchong Lu, not everyone on the mountain talks about immortal fate since ancient times. There is no luck, no result if you try hard. The woman in green clothes sneered, You Taoist priest, you are obviously looking at palmistry. Why are you talking about 8 characters again? Did we talk to you about 8 characters? Nonsense, is it revealed? The plump beauty helped to smooth things out. It's better than those pretending to be scary words. saying that the hall will be blackened and there will be bloodshed disasters, and then hinting at the money-swindling method of giving money so that it can be destroyed. Relying on spending money to eliminate disasters and relieve disasters, you can't believe it all and you can't completely disbelieve it. The young Taoist coughed. There's something to be said here. You have to use the money coming from the main gate to protect yourself from disasters, and money can enlighten the mind. You need to know that this money involves and good fortune, whether it's copper coins or silver. It's just to build a bridge for you and Ming's different journeys, like the incense on the table, the green smoke curling. It is the smallest ascension road in the world. Reaching the sky and listening, sincerity is the spirit, so the sin can be written off. But to say that using those unrighteous money to stop disasters is naturally adding fuel to the fire. It's not that the time has not come. Otherwise, you will do bad things, especially those who are evil and powerful, who are the home of cutting ice. Reverse cattle and sheep, then walk a few more steps, go to the temple and Taoist temple to burn a few incense sticks. It will be all right? How can there be such a good thing in the world? It is like black and white words, good and evil, unless paste yellow. Yu Rongjia's temper was obviously much worse than Yu Yi's. He didn't give this fortune teller any face at all and sneered. It's even more mysterious, isn't it, who will distinguish between the right money and the partial money? A chi practitioner? Isn't it only the city gods from all over the world and the mansion of the 5 mountains of a country? Got cold all of a sudden. The young Taoist had previously devoted all his attention to the plump beauty, but now he finally started to make up for it. Sister Rongyu, you really have a good name, you have a lot of good fortune, and you can do your own thing in your spare time. When a poor Taoist sees your face, you are a good person. If the lucky ones are at the foot of the mountain, marrying a scholar, marrying a husband and teaching a son, getting a jade chopstick seal and wiping a golden scroll, what is the difficulty of ordering your wife? Yu Rongyu snorted, and the plump beauty quietly twisted her arm, reminding her not to be so insignificant. Fortunately, Director Yu was not here for the time being. Otherwise she would not be able to eat and walk around. It stands to reason that even the guests in this side hall belong to the group with the lowest status at the banquet for marriage-seeking women tonight, and there is no one. Bai Mao is here, belongs to the general of the short man, and it is better than the other and more than the next. Palace Master Ling Bai is considered a first-class honored guest here, but the young Taoist priest, the sword-backed boy and the freckled woman, the 3 of them who entered the side hall at the latest, despite their humble status, are also guests of Fanwan Mansion. It shouldn't be so presumptuous, but the young Taoist's words and deeds are just scolding. Otherwise, this maid in green clothes on the side of the straw-shoe boy and the woman with the ball in a bun would still be well-mannered and courteous. It's just that this Daoist Lu, who is used to sleeping in the wild, really doesn't look like a serious person, and he is scolded by himself. Bai Mao Shao was surprised and said with a smile, I never thought that Daoist Lu would know about the affiliation and the official system in the public gate. When Bai Mao was alive, he was not an official. He was only an official from his parents in a county, and he was a foreign official, so he had no chance to use the official formula of sticking yellow. I heard it by chance. The young Taoist began to get close to the generous Bai mansion master. Brother Bai, why did you open the mansion next to the scorpion? Is it because there are so many scorpions? Is there any dried scorpion that can be used as medicine in the house? When your house sells out, the poor road just makes a difference, and a pound in the mountain market can be sold for several taels of silver. Bai Mao said in a bad mood. The wedge-shaped person is said to be out of things. It's not the scorpion of snakes and scorpions that you think of, Dao Chonglu. The Taoist priest was not embarrassed and asked, Isn't it pronounced as Kaziling? Doesn't the word wedge have the same pronunciation as qi? Bai Mao took a sip of his wine and said earnestly, Master Lu, a practitioner, don't always be busy cultivating Taoism and become an immortal, and you should read more in your spare time. The Taoist suddenly realized, so it is. Pei Qian looked at the banquet hall elsewhere. The 2 mountain gods of Hehuan Mountain and many maids of the 2 palaces always persuaded the wine to be attentive. She frowned and asked, Master, the banquet has been delayed for a long time. It's almost half an hour. When does Xiao Fiang plan to start? Chen Pingon glanced at the goddess of the mountain, who now goes by the pseudonym Gong Hua, and said, He is already in seclusion. Just wait patiently for these gods in the temple to be enlightened. And the ghosts are fascinated, and Yuchuanji will really open the pink tent. You can decide life and death, lest there will be a few big fish that slip through the net, especially not the accidental situation where the gods of the temple know that they can't escape, and they will destroy their golden bodies with one blow. Moreover, the more Bai Mao and the others drink, the more they perceive the passage of time. The speed will then become dull, just like when a mortal master falls asleep. Apart from dreaming, he can hardly notice the passage of time. Luqian smiled and asked, Palace Master Bai, Sister Rong and Sister Yu, do you know the name of the big tree at the foot of the mountain? Yu just said he didn't know. Fanwan Mansion has strict rules and strict hierarchy. Usually they are not allowed to ask questions and chew their tongues behind their backs. Bai Mao shook his head. Please ask Chief Daoist Lu to help clarify the confusion. Luqian said with a smile. There is an old saying, Hemerocalis forgets its sorrows and Hahuan forgets its anger. It is just because it is rumored that anyone who sees this flower blooming, whether they are violent or utterly indignant, will turn their anger into joy and their tears into laughter. Every May 5th, around the Dragon Boat Festival, the flowering season of the acacia tree is here. If you look down at the foot of the mountain from the mountain, the flowers are full of trees like holding a red umbrella. The tree at the foot of the mountain is acacia, similar to the sycamore tree with a high crown and broad crown, dense flowers and leaves and beautiful meaning, so it is a good shade tree and street tree. This tree can grow in arid and barren land, but it is not resistant to extreme heat. The scorching sun and prolonged exposure to the sun make it easy to molt, and at the same time, it is afraid of waterlogging. Hearing this, Yu Rongyu sneered, Don't show off your knowledge, Taoist priest. It's hard to say whether it's an acacia tree. Anyway, every Dragon Boat Festival this tree never blooms. It's a fact that everyone knows. The plump beauty looked at Yu Rongyu. The little girl seemed to be taking gunpowder today, and she always spoke to Maimong when she talked to the young Taoist priest. Yui couldn't help but laugh. If a man is handsome, his words are witty, and if he is ugly, he is a hooligan. Yui still glanced at the foreign Taoist priest wearing a fishtail crown, and he wasn't ugly. The young Taoist sighed for no reason. Who would have known that every piece of Chinese food is hard work? If it wasn't for Qin Pingan's appearance here tonight, then no matter whether the young hidden officials of Luopao Mountain agreed to the ceremony in Qingxingguo, the guests in the mountains tonight would all be chopping meat. They are both good and evil, and it is not easy for them to practice, but they eventually become Zhao Fiyang's food for the Chinese meal. Of course, there are a lot of damned ones, and there must be a lot of them. The latter is like chiseling Bai Mao and the two maids of Fanwan Mansion who are sitting beside Luqian at the moment. Qin Pingan couldn't help but gather his voice to form a line, and asked Luqian, Is this acacia tree a manifestation between the virtual and the real? Originally, it was thought that this tree was just Zhao Fiyang's eye-blocking method, which was used to cover the landscape prohibition that had the vision of horned horns on his forehead. But if according to what Luqian said, the growth characteristics of this acacia tree, along with Zhao Fiyang who was born in a mountain python and Panshan Huajiao, are a sign that the two sides are in harmony with each other, which is the so-called Dao atmosphere on the mountain, it is not too much to say that it is an auspicious scene. Such immortal traces are relatively rare to be placed on a Jindan cultivator. Luqian said with a heartfelt smile. Pin Dao said earlier that there are 5 paths under Zhao Fiyang's feet. How could it be made up indiscriminately? Palace Master Zhao's bloodline as a descendant of Jiaolong, and his aptitude for Taoism are all there. Bai Mao asked suspiciously, Master Lu, what did you say you were angry with earlier? Brother Bai, you must keep this good habit of not being ashamed to ask questions. The young Taoist poured a little wine into the palm of his hand, then dipped his fingers in the wine as if he was dipping ink and wrote the word on the table and said with a smile, Yihong is a big business and the is slightly subtle. At this moment, in the cracks of the broken walls and near the roads in Fengla town, as well as in the 2 mountains of Zhuyan and Wuting, a long worm appeared almost at the same time. Like golden threads, they are densely packed and mighty, flocking to the acacia tree at the gate of the mountain. The red strips of paper hanging from the trees melted like water, stretched out bright red long lines and fell to the ground. Seeing this, the accountant at the gate of the mountain was horrified and hurriedly climbed onto the table. The shabby scribe who was in distress calmed himself down and recited the words of the sages in his heart to strengthen his courage. Among them, the preface contains the words of the sages, which is not as popular as the whole poem, but it is also very courageous. On the side of the wine table on the mountain, Luqian smiled and said, Quan is also a kind of insect name, and so is Malu, commonly known by the common people as the centipede. It lives in groups, eats carrion and curls up like a ring of knives. Xiaoyu likes to climb trees and neigh. I believe. In Wedge Ridge, on the side of Palace Master Bai in the grassy clumps, this thing is extremely common. Bai Mao nodded and said, it's very common. There is a saying in the book that 100-legged worm dies without being stiff, which refers to this, Malu. The young Taoist said aggrieved, that's why the poor Taoist misunderstood that the dojo of Palace Master Bai is called Scorpion Neighbor, and there are insects and snakes. Bai Mao, however, sighed to himself. If I remember correctly, in the Autumn Water chapter of Bai Yujing's Headmaster Lu, there was written about this kind of long worm called fun. There is a wonderful sentence saying that Kuei pity fun, fun pity snake. Snake pity wind, wind pity eyes, eyes pity heart. Lu Zhangjiao is really a person of Chundan Taoism. The green-clothed woman squinted at the Taoist priest with the national character wearing the hibiscus crown, and said with a smile, they are all Taoist priests. I don't know who is so small and wise, Xiaoyan Zhanzhan. With a little knowledge he likes to talk cumbersomely and chatter endlessly. Feeling extremely aggrieved, he said with resentment in his eyes, Sister Rongyu, how can you compare the poor road with Lu Chen? The poor road is a. Pei Qian twitched the corners of his mouth. Qin Pingon poured a bowl of wine and handed it to Headmaster Lu. Since he was so good at chatting, he should drink more. Lu Chen stretched out his hand to block the wine and said, Brother Qin probably forgot that the poor people don't drink. Qin Pingon said, you drink. Pin Dao just made up his mind to quit drinking for a few days. Only after drinking can you have the energy and strength to quit drinking. When the sword-carrying boy and the young Taoist were trying to persuade and stop drinking, it was probably because Bai Mao mentioned Bai Yujing and the Taoist named Lu Chen. The two maidservants of the Fanwan mansion heard this name, and they were as fascinated as Bai Mao. They only have a momentary ups and downs in their moods. After all, they are out of reach and it is useless to think too much. The Taoist teacher is as high as the sky and the knowledge of Taoism and law is bottomless. It's just a world away. If you think about Headmaster Lu, you might as well think about the young hidden officials of your own Aquarius continent. He is also an unattainable person, but he still has some hope and thoughts. After all, isn't there a mirror image on the mountain? In the two mansions of Denghu and Fanwan, many female cultivators with their identities are all looking forward to when Luopa Mountain will open. It is also said that Mi Dejiangxian from the Great Wall of Sword Qi has a face like a crown of jade. Of course, the person they most want to meet, the person in the painting, is the young hidden official with a green shirt and a sword, and the wind spirit is incomparable. Even if the status is as noble as the third young lady Yu Yi and the fourth girl Zhao Yan, it is also strange that such a big sect like Luopaitian, why not do a mirror flower water moon? Lu Chen couldn't beat Qin Pingon, so he had to take the wine bowl and drank it all in one go. In fact, it doesn't matter if the three of them drink or not, even if the cow is drunk, this Qin Pingan's root is a talisman, not to mention Pei Qian Yu Chunzi's trick is not enough to see. Now that he started drinking, Lu Chen was no longer restrained. He drank after a meal. The more he drank, the more he had. The young Taoist priest's toasting words are unique. He raised the wine bowl and said, even if the hometown is different, people and ghost have different paths, but after all, the sun and the moon are the same, and I send Daozi to form a good relationship. Lu Chen held the wine bowl in one hand, twisted his wrist, shook it gently, lowered his head and stared. The wine in the bowl rippled in circles. What will be the surname of this boxing in the future, Zhang Yi? Can you? The mountains welcome people and the sounds of streams and rocks are noisy. This wealthy ancestor of the Zhang clan in Tianchao County has white hair and beard, and a burly figure, but he has the appearance of a commoner in gray clothes and black scarves. The old man put his fists on his knees, raised his eyes and looked at the distant scene in the night, the lonely village with flowing water, the old graves of new ghosts, the dead tree jackdaws, like widows crying at night, phosphorus burning like the cold of a man. Zhang Qiong raised his eyes slightly, looking at the Hehuan mountain that seemed like a thorn in the eye, the Wuding Mountain Fanwan mansion, thinking that it was a scene of brilliant lights and intertwined gongs. If you don't watch it, you can see it without worrying about it. In fact, the last time the cultivators of the Zhang family encircled and suppressed Hehuan Mountain, there was no objection from the family ancestral hall. The reason is simple. Most members feel that the benefits are too small and the risks are too great. Chaojun Zhang and Hehuan Mountain have no grievances or enmity, so why are they so tit-for-tat, especially not so eager to make progress? But Zhang Qiong can't convince everyone with reason, so he has to move out of the house and go to the dark one by one. Facts have proved that the ancestor of Zhang's family in Xianxia County is indeed dizzy with old eyes. The monks have not even made it to Yongfeng town at the foot of the mountain, so they had to return without success. They suffered such a big loss and hurt the family. The key is that the vitality that has been accumulated for hundreds of years is fruitless. If it is not for the fact that the family is 1 or 2 generations lower than Zhang Qiong, and there is no earth immortal for the time being, the old man will probably give up the position of the head of the family. Fortunately, Zhang Kaiqin, the great-great-granddaughter who was chosen as the next family's master, had a heart with his great-grandfather, and Qi Song, the old friend of the chief guest secretary, was also a close friend of Zhang Qiong. In addition, Zhang's family in Tianqiao County had a double happiness, except for Zhang Kaiqin, and a young sword cultivator Zhang Yujiao with earth immortal aptitude, which made it possible for Zhang Qiong not to fail in the evening. But to the court of the Lu clan in the Qingxing kingdom, such a piece of land is a thorn in the flesh, and the other 2 countries are not willing to have such a lawless separatist force, occupying thousands of miles of mountains and rivers in vain. Unless the heroic master or the faint-hearted king is willing to bet on the fortune of the country, he will always quarrel like this, and there will be no conclusion for a long time. Zhao Fuyang was certain that Emperor Lu could not persuade the monarchs of the other 2 countries to cooperate sincerely and attack Hehuan Mountain together. Therefore, Zhang Kaiqin and Hong Yangba's trip to the north of Dali successfully persuaded that person to participate in the ceremony of the crown prince of the Lu family. Zhang Qiong asked, "According to the established time in the Fanwan mansion, has it already begun to recruit relatives?" Zhang Kaiqin said, "If it's on time, the mountain god's marriage should have started 2 quarters ago." Zhang Qiong took out an oil paper-wrapped sesame cake from his sleeve and lifted it towards her. Zhang Kaiqin smiled and shook his head. Zhang Qiong said with a smile, "Are we being aggressive? Will Zhao Fuyang jump over the wall? Come and burn a jade with us?" After all, Zhao Fuyang, the local emperor, has promised to wait until the banquet is over, and the day after tomorrow he will return the 3-party treasure seal, including the heir to the emperor, to the Lu family of Qingxing Kingdom. In exchange, within half a year, the Lu family gave back the jade seals scattered in other countries of the same rank from the 3 sides of Hehuan Mountain. Of course, this was just Cheng Qian's tactic to slow down his troops. Zhang Qiong wiped the corners of his mouth. It seems that countless cases have proved that it is really necessary to force Shanzi Yeshio, such as Zhao Fuyang, who is tough and has no lack of skills. They are willing to slash, and they really dare to pull the emperor off his horse. Qing Qian smiled indifferently and said, "A Hehuan mountain is just 2 golden pills, it can't make waves." According to the agreement, he will personally deal with Zhao Fuyang of falling Yuanshan Mountain, and then there will be a fight against him. As for Yu Chuanji, the golden fox fairy, he will let the cultivator Zhang clan of Tianqiao County come to suppress it. Zhang Qiong was puzzled and couldn't help asking, why did Zhao Fuyang change his mind temporarily? Make such a big concession? Qing Qian said, "As of now, the reason for it doesn't matter." This sentence is similar to a certain sentence Zhao Fuyang said in the family ancestral hall. Zhang Kaiqin let out a faint sigh. If Zhao Fuyang and Yu Chuanji never fused the mountains, they were each integrated with the 2 mountains of Suiyuan and Wuting, and they used a secret Taoist house-style technique passed down by Jingxian Temple to improve their realm and practice the Taoism. The Fang forces are all afraid that these 2 prostitute rulers will jump over the wall and give up the foundation of the dojo and the family business, so they escaped over the wall, and since then they have formed a feud with the forces of several parties, and they will fight to the end. Once Zhao Fuyang escapes the birthday, whether it is the Lu clan, the Jinkei faction, or the Zhang clan in Tianqiao County, are unbearable consequences. Although Zhao Fuyang will also know the Danshan's supernatural power passed down by the Jingxian's ancestors, but once he is in charge of the mountain, he will inevitably slow down in such a hurry. Moreover, Qing Qian, as the contemporary head of the Jinkei school, naturally early there are countermeasures. Now that the net has been closed, such as hunting, the horns will advance together, and as the encirclement shrinks, the swarms in the mountains will be wiped out. It is tonight. The entire Hehuan mountain area is already a turtle in a urn, and the entire Hehuan mountain is also the possession of Qing Laozhen. Zhao Fuyang's banquet to invite relatives this time can be regarded as a beauty, and it is also the way of Hehuan mountain's self-destruction. Zhang Kaiqin couldn't help but ask a certain question again. "Grandpa, is there really no emergency?" Zhao Fuyang, the bottleneck of Jindan, is sure that he will not break through and become the nascent soul in the near future? Zhang Qiong put the last piece of sesame oil cake in his mouth, stretched out his finger, pointed to the big tree at the gate of the mountain. Whether this tree has any signs of blooming is the manifestation of Zhao Fiang's signs of breaking the boundary. No amount of restraint can hide it. Fatty Chi staying in Fengla town is not just as simple as shaking his arms. This tree is full of horns. Cheng Qian nodded and said, Pindao had a close look at this tree from Pomo Peak and there was nothing unusual about it. At least it will take decades of water grinding work before Zhao Fiang will have a chance to warm up the nascent soul. It's just that majestic and strange qi machine that makes people confused. No matter how Cheng Qian deduces his mental calculations, he has no clue, let alone touches the truth. To be precise, just like that qi machine never appeared in the small town at the foot of the mountain, Cheng Qian had to give up the idea of pursuing the truth. Instead of going back to the source, he only calculated the good and bad luck of the hexagram, and the result was still relatively vague, generally belonging to for Cheng Qian and the Jinke faction. This is enough for Cheng Qian and the Jinke faction. Zhang Qiong praised for no reason. A high official is like a king and a young man is like a king, which is rare in the world. Cheng Qian said indifferently, Yao Shao knew the old man has his own attitude. Zhang Kaiqing was a little helpless. They are all elders, so she should not speak. You two old children, stop arguing here. Zhang Kaiqing knew that his great-grandfather, who was the protector of the Qingxin kingdom, and the third head of the Jinke faction, could not be considered to have the same interests in the true sense. The grandfather disliked Cheng Qian, who was too polite, too immortal, and too light-hearted. Private evaluation of each other is the wood-carving clay sculpture in the shrine. Zhang Kaiqing once believed in this and did not take it as a derogatory statement, so she only made such a comment with Hong Yongbua after she met someone in Qingquanfang. It is only said that the last time the Zhang clan of Tianchao County attacked Hehuan Mountain, the Lu clan of Qingxin Kingdom and the Jinke faction chose to sit on the sidelines. Of course, Emperor Lu and Qing Qian have their own concerns. For example, the other two countries have troops on the border and are eyeing them. What's more, the Lu family's court still has a three-way seal which fell into Zhao Fiang's hands. I am not afraid of Zhao Fiang destroying the treasure seals, but I am afraid that Zhao Fiang will use the means of going up the mountain to injure them. The treasure seal, which was supposed to be used for suffocating the country, has become a gangrene of the bones. The mountains and rivers are connected with each other, and the Lu family's royal family will be dumb to eat Huanglian. But Grandpa always repeats one sentence over and over these days. I always feel that something is wrong, but I just can't say what is wrong. Although she was not discouraged, Zhang Kaiqing felt for the first time that her grandfather had a twilight energy, and the hero was Twilight. Within the family Zhang Kaiqing and young cultivators such as Zhang Yujiao, almost everyone supported her great-grandfather's wrong decision that really hurt the family. Like Zhang Yujiao, he felt that the only mistake was that his realm was not high enough. On the contrary, those old people in the ancestral hall who were 1 or 2 generations lower than Zhang Qiong had a lot of resentment about this, and they were good at it. The well water of both sides did not violate the river water, so why did they provoke Zhao Fiang of Hehuan Mountain? It is also a land immortal who is envied by everyone but cannot be sought. There are also old, young and young. Zhang Qiong belongs to the old people among the earth immortals. Although he won't be shaken by the soul and run out of oil, but if Zhang Qiong is within the Jiazi, he still can't break through and he will really end his life, end of life. It's just that Zhang Qiong has always been open to it. He only said that in the past few decades, the old man has not started to prepare for adding oil and prolonging life, but has already left the relationship. He purchased the giant wood in Yuzhang County in Dali Hongzhou early and prepared the coffin. Now Zhang Qiong is quite complacent about this transaction, saying that he is too insightful and quick enough to take action. If it is a few years later when Dali sets up a logging institute, let alone an old-fashioned Jindan cultivator like him, the cultivators of the 5 realms would never even think of buying a single piece of Yuzhang County wood. Qingzhenjin, who looks like a teenager, is a young fairy, and he has already touched the bottleneck of Jindan, touching the threshold of nascent soul realm. It is said that he has already started to prepare for retreat, and has opened up a new dojo cave, the Jinke school. The treasury has spent a lot of money on this and even there are candidates for guards, but it is not Zhang Qiong but a jade pure realm patriarch of the gods. As long as the Battle of Hehuan Mountain is settled, and the crown ceremony of His Royal Highness the Prince of Qingxin Kingdom is over, Cheng Qian will retreat, and the address will be in the blessed land of Qingtan of Shengao sect. The monks on the mountain, nascent soul facing these two monks, are ridiculed as the 1,000-year-old and 80,000-year-old turtles, which often give people the impression of lifelessness, more than a year at the end of a year. In addition to the three realms Dongfu, Jindan and Jade Pure Realm, as long as they are not hopeless and hopeless like Zhangqiong, they will appear to be the most sharp-edged and full of energy at the beginning of the realm. Because these three-level cultivators will all think about going to the next level. Therefore Zhangqiong, Qingqian and Zhao Fiyang, who are also Jindan cultivators, will have completely different cultivating mentalities. Zhangqiong suddenly smiled and said, "Be careful. When things come to an end, let's do the math. Just treat it as a temporary cramming." The old man took out a few tortoise shells from his sleeves, which were the 9 ribs of the Yuanjiang River dreamed of by Aquarius Show. At this moment Qingqian said, "Qi Song and the others are here." Zhangqiong had to put away the tortoise shell and there were too many taboos for divination. Soon 5 people climbed to this point. There was only one unfamiliar face. It was a dark girl. She carried an oil paper umbrella and a cotton wrap. Qingqian and Zhangqiong looked at each other, and it was obvious that the two immortals were aware of the subtle changes in Lu Mo's body. On the contrary, Qi Song, who is a master, because he is a pure martial artist, has not yet discovered that this disciple has not yet made a fortune. Qi Song helped the girl to introduce the identities of the two sides. Hahuan Mountain Fengla Town, Qi practitioner and I Ching. And I Ching didn't have that kind of idea of looking up to the mountains, even if he was a martial arts master with a golden body. But when she was only a short distance away facing a real protector of the Qingxing kingdom, the old head of the Zhang family in Tianchao County, and I Ching was inevitably nervous, clutching the rope of the cotton bag with both hands. The girl trembled. "Two old gods, my name is I Ching and the Taoist name is Qingni." In the mixed Hahuan Mountains, especially in Fengla Town at the foot of the mountain, the names of Qingqian and Zhangqiong are so familiar that no one knows them. Young sword immortal Zhang Ye's feet were expressionless. Jin Luo frowned and couldn't help but laugh. Serious monks who have masters and genealogy are generally only qualified to have a Taoist title if they have entered the realm of the cave. You are a Qi trainer who just went up the mountain to practice and now you are in a state, adding a superfluous name to Qingni. Don't you admit that you are Yamazawa Yeshio? Qingqian remained silent, just using the means of looking at the air and looking at the mountains to look at the girl. Her aptitude was good, but she was a little older and lost the best time to practice the superior way. Zhangqiong nodded and smiled. "Young Daoist Qingni, do you have relatives and friends in the town? If there is, let Zhang Kaiqin and Zhang Yujiao go back to Fengla Town again, so that no one will be affected by the siege of Hahuan Mountain by various forces tomorrow morning." And I Ching answered honestly, "Yes, but they can take care of themselves and have their own plans." Zhangqiong smiled and said, "To be honest, there will be a turmoil in Fengla Town soon. The movement is not small. The gods on the mountain fight and everyone may not be able to protect themselves." And I Ching said, "Sister Lu and Uncle Lu have their own things to do." After so many years of getting along with each other day and night, the girl knew exactly what kind of temper Zhou Qiu and Lu Tai had. The old man nodded. "Young Daoist Qingni, you said it well, we are all like that." Qingqian glanced at the girl with a firm look. The Daoist real person who looked like a teenager shook his head gently. In the end he was playing the piano to the ox, and the spring breeze did not enter the donkey's ear. He held his breath and held his mind, pinching the Ziwu-ju on his chest, holding the meaning of yin and yang. The ancient earth immortals and the ancient real people all lived forever by eating qi. Qi practitioners are not as good as the martial arts practitioners, but they also pay attention to a drop of water and a stone. The girl's heart is pure, and at this moment she just thought to herself, compared to the two liars before, the two seniors on the mountain in front of her are really immortals, they are really immortals. Zhangqiong asked with his heart, "Qingqian, you are not the kind of person with a narrow mind. Why is Zhao Fiyang so disliked by yourself, and it even seems that you have some hatred for him?" To say that it was because of Zhao Fiyang's spiritual background would be wrong, because both Qingjing Peak and Chuiqing Peak of the Jinke faction both had Qi practitioners with similar skills, and Qingqian would not reject it. If it was just because of Zhao Fiyang and Jin Xianan's immortal family relationship, Qingqian was worried that he would join the nascent soul, and then ran back to the Jinke faction to compete with himself for the position of the head of a sect. I am afraid that he would underestimate Qingqian even more. The avenue is wild. At that time, Zhao Fiyang was expelled from the Jinke sect, and the genealogy was removed and he became a wild cultivator. Later, Zhao Fiang secretly became a Taoist partner with the fox charm on the big river. Qian saw it in his eyes, but he always don't care about Zhao Fiang, a rebellious person. It's just that Lei Ting doesn't fight with frogworms. But what made Qian murderous was not that Zhao Fiang had the hope of breaking the bottleneck of the Jindan realm and becoming the nascent soul, but that the method of proving the Tao of this mountain python was too filthy, especially when it involved Jinke. To send several Taoist veins, this is a violation of orthodoxy and absurd for Qian, who was a self-proclaimed Taoist priest of the Jinke school at the beginning of his cultivation in the mountains. Qian was silent for a moment and answered with his heart. In the Xianxia ancestral hall, Zhao Fiang hung 3 paintings of the patriarch, and I heard that he was also trying to hang a portrait of Bai Yujing's headmaster Lu. In the final analysis, whether it is Twikingfeng or Jingxianan, according to the strict sense of Taoism, they all belong to the downhill side branch of the Bai Yujing Nanweiqing lineage, but they all belong to the not in the stream list. After all, the Jinke faction back then. The founder of the mountain, she was an abandoned disciple who was expelled from the Taoist temple by Chao Tianjun of Lingfiguan. Zhang Qiang wondered, "It's just this kind of thing?" Qian sneered, "Just?" Zhang Qiang thought about it for a while, then nodded and said, "That's right, your Daoist legal heritage is not the same as our mountain family." Yes, there is an undocumented covert saying that Qian's greatest vision for cultivating Taoism in this life is to become an immortal. And eventually he will see Headmaster Lu of Bai Yujing come to the truth. Master did not follow the rules of the mountain gate, and once privately passed a robe to Zhao Fiang. The robe followed the ritual system of the Taoist priests taught by Lingfei Temple. In addition, Zhao Fiang was so daring that he dared to privately build an extremely arrogant Taoist crown, delusional thinking that one day wear this vestment, wear a lotus crown and sway through the market. Qian's eyes were sharp and murderous in an instant, and he said in a deep voice, "Whoever obeys without this way will die." A flower hall in Fanwan House. The eldest young lady of Hehuan Mountain and the youngest 4th young lady Zhao Yan accompanied their mother Yuchuanji the mansion to comfort the masters of Baihua Lake, whose nest had been smashed to pieces. Yuchuanji seemed to be frowning, but in fact she was gloating at the misfortune in her heart. Looking at the family of 3 in the Shuiyue mansion, who looked like a mourning concubine, she said all her good things, but it failed to make the other party feel any better. Indeed, if a water mansion is gone, who will leave it? All will lose heart. It's just that we can't just let them leave the Fanwan mansion and rush back to Baihua Lake. Yuchuanji said, "Junzhang, who you and I are actually in-laws, it's just a passing scene. Now there is such a mess in the Shuiyue mansion. Disasters, in the sense of reason, we can't ignore Hehuan Mountain, but the water house is far away from here, the mountains and rivers are far away, and now you can't change the situation if you rush back. Let's make this marriage first tonight, and then I and Fiang will help you. Go to Baihua Lake, ask for justice with that strange Shi Yuan, and the court of Miyun Kingdom, otherwise how can Hehuan Mountain help you?" Zhang Xiangdao, who was wearing a crown facing the sky and a black dragon robe, just twitched his beard and said nothing. Wei Chan thought about it for a moment, nodded, and persuaded her husband that this was the end of the matter and he couldn't be in a mess. Only their youngest son has the widest heart, and he still has a leisurely mood at the moment. Yu Fuzuan, who looked at the stunner a few times, glanced at her 2 daughters, thinking that if they could sleep with them, it would be real. Yen Fu is not shallow. Yuchuanji actually didn't look down on the pair of Shiufu Taoist companions. Just like the harsh words Zhao Fiang said earlier, Zhang Xiangdao and the halfway partner Wei Chan, an old turtle who was lucky enough to form a pill, Dao heart is rotten, an old clam spirit in the Dragon Gate realm is destined to have no hope of forming a pill in this life. It is precisely because of this that Zhao Fiang chose this in-law. As soon as Baihua Shuiyue Mansion stole the long-established Dragon King Temple, his position was not right, and he never got the official seal of the Miyun Kingdom's court. Shuifu prostitutes make waves and do many evils. In Miyun Kingdom, the government and the opposition are not popular. If Zhang Xiangdao is not a golden pill, the water palace opened up has a good location, and the monks can't arrest it. Otherwise, Miyun Kingdom would have wanted to use their water palace for a long time. In addition, the husband Zhao Fiang makes mountains just like alchemy in a fairy family. He needs to adjust yin and yang, and has both dragons and tigers, water and fire. And Zhang Xiangdao, the old muscle spirit, and Zhang Hanquan with the Taoist name Dragon's Gill, are all from aquarium spirits who practice water law, plus a group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals of the water house who are placed elsewhere, just to make up for it this part. The most important thing is that the Shui mansion and the rest of the guests in the mansion have one thing in common, that is, they are all scumbags who died in vain. If they kill them, Zhao Fiyang has no worries, it is the Confucian Academy. Even if there is a gentleman who wants to make a big fuss, I'm afraid it will be difficult. What's wrong? Hahuan Mountain kills demons and defends the road for you. Is there something wrong? Maybe it's still an act of raising hope that is praised by the monks on the mountain. As for how Yi Xiu treats Zhao Fiyang and Yu Chuanji in the future, does it matter if he dares to approach them? Yu Chuanji deliberately didn't see Zhang Hengquan's wretched gaze, took a sip of his drink and said with a charming smile, I usually talk to Fiyang about Han Quan, and I often say that such a good son-in-law has a good aptitude for Taoism, good looks and good looks. Even Zhang Yujiao, the young Jianxian of Chao County that day, Jingxianan and several Daoist Junyans of Zwingfeng, do not have such a decent appearance as Han Quan. Zhang Xiangdao squeezed out a smile and raised his glass, then I would like to thank you Fu Zun. Just looking at the appearance, you can be sure that it is the short and strong young man of Zhang Xiangdao and Wei Chan's biological son. He also raised his glass and grinned, my son-in-law thanked my mother-in-law. Compared with his mother, Zhao Yan was still a little thinner so he could only strain his face without laughing. The goddess of the falling UNC mountain in the banquet room next door has long since changed her name to Gonghua. Seeing that she was already drunk, she was overwhelmed by alcohol and sat at the table resting on her forehead. In fact, she has silently used her magical powers to break up the spirit of the wine, but she deliberately condensed the smell of alcohol all over her body and lingered on her clothes for a long time. A few men sitting on the side, looking to her side, looking at the bulging and spectacular scenery, can't wait to become that table, and of course some want to become chairs. The Qingxing Kingdom's troops and horses have begun to advance in an orderly manner towards Hahuan Mountain. Because it was a royal expedition as the main tent of the Chinese army, it was heavily guarded. Yueshenzhen and several water gods showed their golden bodies and guarded the chariots. The various gods under their command are responsible for clearing the way for the vanguard cavalry army. Inside a carriage, the carriage is very spacious and can hold a table. The old emperor of Qingxing Kingdom, wearing a bright yellow dragon robe, is reading the memorials that are piled up into a hill. On the table is a celadone qilong incense burner with purple smoke. Curly, the spices burnt come from the secret system of the Jinke school which can soothe the nerves. The emperor of Qingxing Kingdom has been an emperor known for his diligence since he sat on the dragon chair. Sitting across from him is a young man with a handsome face. It is His Highness the Crown Prince who is about to hold the ceremony. Because he is not the eldest son, so at the end of last year and this spring, the court and the opposition continued to criticize, and His Majesty the Emperor did not deliberately conceal this matter, and handed him many secret folds from local places. If he hadn't seen those excerpts, the prince would have thought that he was the candidate for the crown prince. So express or implied. For this reason he asked his father a question at the time, why did they deceive themselves so much? Because the prince believes that he is not a person who can't hear the words of the bone, he still understands this superficial truth. His Majesty the Emperor gave a strange answer that made the prince puzzled. They were afraid that you would take revenge silently, and they would turn over the old accounts after you ascended the throne. And when you want to understand, you can barely inherit the throne. The old emperor threw a copy of Zhuxi's memorial to the young prince and said, "Look at it." The prince took the book, quickly browsed the content and frowned slightly, hoping that the court would prohibit outliers from serving as 5 bureau officers and other noble officials, and must appoint the sons of ministers and literary scholars. This is related to the prince's the usual idea is completely deviated. Now that the imperial court is in ruins, it is time to promote those officials with real talents and practical knowledge and those who are not from a high background. When the old emperor saw that the prince was hesitant to speak, he said, "When you pick up a pen and plan a move, I say you write it." The prince quickly picked up the pen and dipped in the ink, and the old emperor said slowly, Let him play it, and from now on the officials should not pay more attention to outsiders." The old emperor said, "If you are not tired, just look at these excerpts." The young prince chose a few memorials with a lot of yellow stickers. The countries in the central part of Aquarius Island have always had a customary official rule. The ministers' memorials and official documents such as Zhazi are all written on white paper. If there is a lot of content and the text is complicated, I am worried that His Majesty the Emperor will not be able to read them. The officials followed the old way, using yellow slips of paper to capture the main points, attached to the text, no more than 100 words at most, preferably within 3 crosses, to facilitate His Majesty the Emperor to quickly browse and review and save time. One of the excerpts, written by a minister of the Ministry of Industry, is to ask the court to elevate the Ministry of Industry, which is now a heavy duty, to the front line, which is located after the 2 departments of rights and officials, and before the departments of soldiers, punishments and households. The Ministry of Industry and the Ministry of Household, according to the old system of the imperial court, have always belonged to the backward yamen that cannot be shaken. In short, if the Longzhong of the rearward department is transferred to the front line, it is actually a real promotion. The Ministry of War has great objections, and they do not agree with the fact that they have voluntarily given up the Hehuan Mountains when sending troops this time. Among them, the minister of the Ministry of War wrote a sentence on the book: obtaining an inch is the king's inch, and obtaining a chi is also the king's chi. As the saying goes, there are 1,000 people in a family and one person is in charge. You must understand the difficulty and ease of this truth earlier. The emperor coughed a few times, raised the back of his hand to his mouth, and remained silent for a long time. When his breathing was steady, he picked up the case and a few notes, raised his head and said, I hope that one day in the future in your hands, the heaven and earth will be pure and gentle and talents will follow suit. Splashing Peak. Zhou Xian and Lu Tai quietly left Fengla town and came here to wait for news. She looked at the few stones on the ground, and the more she looked at it, the more unusual it became. The masters on the mountain had the magical power of that pinch of earth, and also had this technique of throwing stones into formations. Some people shrank the mountains and rivers and appeared out of thin air on the top of the mountain. Zhou Qiu and his group breathed a sigh of relief. It was Mr. Qin who had removed the blindfold. Qin Pingon, who came here from far away, didn't explain anything, just smiled. Meet again. Qin Pingon didn't hide from Lu Qin. He did have 2 clones. He served as the 2 hidden stars of the Big Dipper array and was responsible for cooperating in the dark. Too late, a clone had an accident, and these 2 talismans could also fill in the gaps. For these 2 avatars, Qin Pingon used his original appearance, but the attire was different. At this moment, Qin Pingon, who is on the top of the mountain, can be said to be immortal. He wears a golden crown and a blue gauze robe, holding a Ganoderma lucidum in his hand and stepping on a pair of sneakers. It's not that Qin Pingon was deliberately showing off his family, but that as long as he had the intention to hide, he would be able to hide his body shape and chi, making it difficult for nascent soul cultivators to find a trace. Then there is a strong enemy, but you can't beat it and you can run fast. The young hidden official who saw the youthful appearance earlier was awkward. Even though there were many chi trainers on the mountain far away, the old patriarch of Fengxue Temple was a rejuvenated master. Nearly there is also the protector of the Qingxing kingdom. It was the Mr. Qin in front of him who made Zhou Qi and Lu Tai feel more accustomed to it. Qin Pingon asked, Miss Zhou Lu Biaochong, what do you think of Zhao Fiyang's behavior? Although Lu Tai wondered why the young hidden official asked this question, he didn't think much about it but replied from his heart. This Hehuan mountain hides dirt and filth, and it is a place for pickling. And for Hehuan, in this area of thousands of miles, it is impossible to gather so many ghosts and gods. Zhao Fiyang must be the culprit. It's just. I don't deny that he is a powerful character, just say that Gu Feng's head, now it has already landed. Zhao Fiyang had previously let Yu Yi leave him in the small town courtyard, and he also promised that Li Dang of Wuding Mountain Temple would not live long. Qin Pingon smiled, non-committal, but shifted his gaze to Zhou Qi, who had been silent, waiting for her answer. Zhou Qiu carefully considered and said slowly, It's not a kind of good, but it can't be said that Zhao Fiyang is the kind of vicious person. Qin Pingon asked with a smile. What Miss Zhou means is that Zhao Fiyang is not enough to be punished by everyone? Zhou Qiu didn't know how to answer for a while. Qin Pingon continued. If I say that tonight Hehuan Mountain will host a banquet to entertain the ghosts and ghosts of various cave houses, Zhao Fiyang intends to encircle and suppress all the guests before the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom and the Zhang clan of Tianchao County? Zhou Qiu and Lu Tai, as well as a group of scout heroic spirits, all looked at each other. The wicked have their own grind? Treating others with their own way? Yamazawa knocks you, he can really do anything. Qin Pingon asked again. If you put it another way, assuming the same result, replace Zhao Fiang with Qian, what do you think? Zhou Qi shook his head and Lu Tai also scratched his head. Qin Pingon smiled and said, everyone performs their duties, I just ask casually, you don't have to take it seriously. Lu Tai nodded in agreement. These crooks, he is a vulgar warrior and he can't think of a reason for it anyway, so he doesn't bother. Qin Pingon is a famous hidden official in the world. You think about these things, it's just right to think about it. Each of them performs their own duties. This statement is very accurate. After all, he is a scholar and his words are unambiguous. Zhou Qian was a little sullen, what a fool. As a result, Lu Tai was elbowed by her. Qin Pingon took out a stack of talismans. I have some talismans here which are side branches of the magic talismans on the mountain. They can help you walk in the daytime and keep your mind in mind and return to Dallas' hometown safely. You go to Dali Jingji. For the land, I need 3 just in case I drew more talismans, 5 for each person just to be sure. Zhou Qian was careful and roughly calculated the distance. Mr. Qin, we only need to go to Dadu and we will be very secure, so we don't need 5 but at most 2. As long as they reach the border of Dali, there are various mountain and water gods, civil and military officials of the temples and temples of the city god to guide them back to their hometowns. Now that the wish here has been fulfilled, the mountain Li Rang and the demon monk Gu Feng have both conferred their heads. In fact, as long as there is a talisman to maintain their true spirit, they will not become unconscious ghosts and evil spirits, or be caught by the wind between heaven and earth, blowing away the remaining souls. Then they can show their identities along the way. In the territory of the countries south of the central Aquarius continent, is there anyone else who dares to stop them from crossing the border and heading north? Qin Pingon shook his head and smiled. Listen to me, don't be polite. You have to leave room for everything and it can't be considered too interlocking. Fulu has time to spare and you can go home without hurrying and walking. Slow down and see more of the Taiping scenery along the way. This talisman is called the True Body Talisman of Day and Night Yushin, and it is of high rank. It is recorded in the last few pages of the authentic works of Pill Book. It has long been lost in Howern world. Qin Pingon was the first to see this real talisman. It was obtained from the hands of Li Baozhen. It is made of golden talisman paper. The front and back sides are painted with alchemy books. The center of the talisman is drawn with a circle. The front and back are like 2 sun and moon, each with a black armor and a white armor, God will. The essence of this talisman lies in the word, true body. According to Li Zixing's comment, it can be linked with the deity of the day and night wandering god. The effect is similar to the so-called direct to the sky in officialdom. The secret memorials of local officials can be placed directly on the bookcase of the emperor and the lord. The ordinary Taoist talisman sect's method of inviting and instructing gods, no matter how high your talisman rank is, will never have such a miraculous effect. Zhou Qian and Lu Tai took the pile of talismans and distributed them. Zhou Qi seemed to have temporarily let go of his status as a military cultivator, and Xianxia gave the young hidden officer a blessing. There are those who have been studying for a few days at the Murano school or the official academy, and they don't clench their fists to say goodbye. In a foreign land on the top of a mountain, people and ghosts say goodbye to each other. After the figure of the young hidden official quietly disappeared, Lu Tai laughed and teased. Zhou Qian, Mr. Chen, how is it? Is it better to see it once you hear it? You don't have it? I've never liked anyone in my life. The female ghost shook her head and finally smiled brightly, then make up for it in the next life. Above the sea of clouds, a strangely shaped fairy is as fast as thunder, like a hollowed-out wooden stake. The owner is the female crown of the upper 5 realms of the Taoist Dongting, the contemporary palace owner of Lingfei Palace, and the founder of Xiangjuan. Of course, she followed the decree of the master's master, and took Wenshin to leave Jingxian nunnery together. On the side of the Jinkei faction, there is only the peak master of Qingjing Peak, the old-fashioned Jindan cultivator Xingzi. 1 jade pu and 2 golden cores rushed to Hehuan Mountain on this fast-moving Xianxia. Xiangjuan did not tell them what they were doing or who they saw. She closed her eyes and rested, and handed over the steering of the ferry to her nephew. Xingzi didn't dare to disturb Xiangjuan patriarch's humility, and asked Wen Jingxian with a heartfelt voice, "Wen Xiangxian, the speed of this Xianxia might not be inferior to that of Luxiazu, right?" It really opened the eyes of the old woman. The speed of the wind is faster than any ferry boat. It is indeed a matter of hearing the Tao and riding the ferry, and the flying flow is really fast. Hearing this excessively important honorific title, Zhou Xian, such a thick-skinned person, also burst into laughter. On the 12th floor of the 5 cities of Baiyujing in the Qingming world, Xianxia is the exclusive title of the Taoist Tianjun. Tens of thousands of miles of mountains and rivers, like a single step, ride the white clouds to the emperor's hometown, 3 dynasties a day in the Jade Emperor city. It's far worse than the legendary Liu Xiao boat. He shook his head and said, but my ancestor Chao, there is a Guanyueka given by Master Lu and Wuxia can't catch up. The old woman was speechless. When said carefully, Peak Master Xing, just call my Dao number tugging. The old woman was speechless, thinking she had heard it wrong. When smiled carefully and said, that's right, it's the dirt ridge that fellow Xing Dao thought. This Taoist name was taken by Wen Jingxin himself. Master couldn't beat him back then, so he had to agree. Originally, the Taoist title that Lao Zhenren wanted to bestow on this disciple was the Cloud Appearance. The old woman was silent again. What an oddity. As expected of a genius cultivator from Lingfei Palace of Shangzong. After all, Xingzi was a Jindan cultivator. Although he was not a pure martial artist, he could see Wen Jing's body as a master, with true qi going into and out of his heart, and his fists flowing around his body. Probably this is Wufu's method of tempering his physique. When asked carefully, have you ever seen that Xianxia with your own eyes? The old woman said with a face, I have never been to the capital of Dali. When nodded carefully, not taking it seriously, he had not been to Luojing Mansion and Dada Battlefield either. Xingzi asked cautiously, when Xianxia has the intention to ascend the martial arts in addition to his ascension of the Taoist? When carefully grinned and said, there are clouds in the boxing manual and the body is full of fists. And the word meat flying just happens to have a meaning of cultivating immortals and ascending. It can be seen that there is no distinction between learning boxing and cultivating Taoism. Holmes. This is a recognized Taoist genius in one continent. He was only a little short of being among the 10 young candidates for Aquarius continent at the beginning. When Xinshin casually handed a punch to Yunhai on the side of Xianxia and smiled, how difficult is it to learn boxing and practice martial arts? Conquer the world horizontally and vertically. Xiangjun opened his eyes and reprimanded, it's not ashamed to say it. When Jing was not afraid, it seems that in Lingfei Palace he was a Taoist priest who was used to being lazy and rascal for a long time. A few great masters, don't you allow me to say a good punch? Xiangjun said sternly. Since ancient times there have been many Taoist learners and few who have attained Taoism. This is the mantra of my family and it is also a prophecy of martial arts. Few are like you. What kind of style has it been? After a long time, you will only waste your qualifications. When you come to martial arts masters like Yu Hong and Zhou Haijing, you will suffer greatly. The young man sighed. Of course he didn't dare to talk back to the palace master in person, he just slandered. The attitude of the patriarch of Xiangjuan and his own master is similar. It is an old saying, you don't agree. If you can meet the patriarch, I am afraid you will know that you are wrong. It's just that for some reason Wen Xin has an intuition, or it may be an illusion. It seems that after Xiangjuan patriarch came down the mountain he felt unstable and very nervous. In Aquarius, who did she meet and what happened to make her so nervous? You must know that this is the palace master of the monks in the upper 5 realms, or the Taoist priest, the disciple and grandson of the headmaster Lu of Nanhua City. At the top of Splashing Mo Peak, after Zhou Qian and the others went north, Qin Pingan reappeared, but there was another Lu Qin beside him. Lu Qin squatted on the ground, looked at the stones, raised his head and asked, what do you think? Qin Pingan smiled and said, the people in the mountains and rivers in the world are witnesses and they exist, and I can't let my generation speak. Sort of coming chapter 1021. Without Qin Pingan's request, Lu Qin understood it, as if he was picking up an abandoned picture scroll for Qin Pingan that seemed to be thrown in a bookcase. The 2 monks on the top of Pomo Peak are like 2 gods overlooking the earth and the common people. In the field of vision, the mountains are as small as mustard seeds and the rivers are as thin as silk threads, but the whole picture of people and things is clearly visible and there is nothing to hide. I saw that in this painting of mountains and rivers, there was no strawshoe boy who had wandered here, and there was no Pei Qian who came to Hehuan Mountain from Tongyi's Hao, and the rest of the personnel were business as usual. The sick man and the man who boiled the liver and intestines were still beheaded by the young Jianxiu from the Zhang clan in Tianchao County. Only the literati Hutuang and the headless female ghost holding an umbrella were left. Lu Town. The dark girl who goes by the pseudonym Qingni was entrusted by Zhou Xian to the old warrior Qi Song, who had a halberd beard and frog belly, and was taken away from the town. Disciple Lu Mo accompanied him. On the cliffs of the mountain she still saw Zhou Xian, the guardian of the country, and the man who was about to divination. Zhang Qiong still had the taboo of divination because the girl came to the Tinkui Moon event, so the old man put away the tortoise shells. Just because Lu Mo never met Lu Qin, the former female warrior who was beside the dragon girl, she has lost the great fortune that can be transferred to practice Taoism. Because Lu Qin did not go to the Dragon King of Baihua Lake in the temple, the stone turtle at the foot of the mountain still swallowed its anger. In the flower hall, the Shuiwei mansion Zhang Xiangdo's family of 3, the Shui mansion's old nest was safe, and Yu Chunzi's mother and daughter were seated over there to entertain the distinguished guests, but they just changed some words. There is still a bit of book business spirit in the Wedgeling Ridge Palace master, who is unwilling to go out to anyone so he can only drink alone, and he has not been the thumbs up. There is nothing in his sleeve, and he should be able to spend money with only a single snow. The flower and bird painting album I bought. After 3 rounds of wine, everyone in the house was drinking, and I didn't realize that a romantic tent was opened and laid out. The head was thrown behind the courtyard at the foot of the mountain, returned to the mountain and sat beside her. When the time came, Qin Ju and Lao Longqing Fuqi of Xianxia Island had quietly left Hehuan Mountain, and the Yuchuanji of Xiang Daoxiu and Wei Snake had already left. When she got a secret message from her heart, she found an excuse and took her 2 daughters out of the flower hall, letting them meet with Yu Zhen, and immediately retreated to the family ancestral hall for refuge. Yu Yuyi in the banquet hall looked complicated, and she took the initiative to meet the goddess of the mountain. After drinking a cup of wine, she attracted the gazes of the wild cultivators and the gods. The goddess of the mountain was pale and colorless, and her heart was empty. She seemed to have a premonition that disaster was coming, but she could only stare at Yu Yuyi's departure. Backview. At the gate of the mountain at the border of Hehuan Mountain and Fengla Town, strange insects flocked to the acacia tree like a tide, and the acacia tree that has not bloomed for many years suddenly blooms like a red umbrella. In the fog, the scribes in the crane cloak fell to the ground like a drunken drunkard, and then the mountain collapsed and the ground cracked. The falling kite and the Wooting Mountain turned over. There was no sign of a disaster that would destroy the top. Inside the Fanwan mansion, the walls collapsed and the lichen was torn. There were countless cracks. After realizing it, she felt like Mrs. Peepa's coquettish scolding. She raised her spirits and turned the aura of the Qi Palace. She wanted to escape from the danger in the wind, but was hit by a familiar rain flag. Duan, the spirits who opened the palace on the Yuanyang Road, and the burly spirits who brought 2 coquettish maids here to eat and drink, were all pierced by the simple iron scorpions that were as fast as electric shocks, especially those who showed gold. There is a goddess in the body, trying to join forces to prevent this disaster. Among them, Li Dang, the mountain god, is even more violent, scolding Zhao Fiyang and Yu Chuanji, a dog and a man and a woman who are crazy, Zhang Xiangdao and a young man named Dragon Gill. The head was beaten to pieces by Zhao Fiyang's out-of-body Yin god. Zhang Xiangdao resorted to an escape method, but was dragged back to the powder pill house by the Yin god, and the body, skin and sacks were ground to the ground. The officials and subordinates of the Fushui house were not able to escape. Like 2 snakes intertwined, the upper and lower mountains were on the ground, rolling violently. The dust covered the sky and the area was thousands of miles away. They asked Qi Song and Zhang Yujiao to contact the various forces, including the Emperor Lu of the Qingxing Kingdom. They only brought Zhang Kaiqin and wanted to stop Zhao Fiyang's unscrupulous, proving the way. Unfortunately, the general trend has been achieved. Zhao Fiyang's expectation was that not only did he succeed in Panshan and become a mountain dragon in the nascent soul realm, but even the Dao Lu Yuchuanji successfully became a nascent soul Tianhu just because of a full meal, but his realm was not stable yet. Showing her true body hiding from Chenqian's attacking techniques, she can't hide it, but she will carry it hard. In order to let Zhao Fiyang take Yu Zhen and his children to escape the encirclement and suppression, she does not hesitate to fight to the death. Qian and Zhang Qiong were finally struck by Qing Qian with several lightning strikes. Yu Chuanji fell to the ground and he didn't know whether to live or die. Zhao Fiyang just ran rampant. Taking the initiative to avoid its edge, the mountain flood dragon did not hurt anyone, Only the female sword Immortal Zhang Kaiqin resolutely used the sword. And the night was as bright as day, and the dense sword light was like arrows raining down, hurting the huge head of the mountain flood dragon, but it was still a pity. Failing to stop the flight of Xianxia, she was hit by the tail of Jiao Jiao instead. Zhang Kaiqin was smashed into the cliff at the top of Splashing Mo Peak, and when she took back her flying sword she vomited a mouthful of blood and could only watch in the distance. Zhao Fuyang, who was as fast as a thunderbolt, escaped from his life, and he finally escaped into a secret formation in a cave in the mountains where he disappeared. The scene of the scroll changed. I saw a small Taoist temple in the capital of Qingxing Kingdom, where the incense was dying, and among the rocky rock walls that were difficult to detect, there was a little snake, more than a foot long with horns on its head, and there was already a dragon. Appearance: Shan Jiao curled up, restrained the smell that was already shallow, closed his eyes and began to heal his wounds. This mountain dragon has a unique cave in its belly, and Zhao Yan and the others in the U formation were saddened and hated to the sky. In their heart lake, a calm voice of Zhao Fuyang sounded, "Qingqian did not dare to kill your mother. It's just that for some reason the Fengla town at the foot of the mountain in this catastrophe was like a piece of tofu on the table, and was pushed out of the battlefield by Zhao Fuyang, intentionally or unintentionally. It's just that the mortal master's accountant at the foot of the mountain fell into the town together with the table at that time. He just fell into a mess and none of the living people in the small town died." Qingqian Yufeng hovered over the border, an old man with a youthful appearance. His face was ashen. On the ground, Yu Chuanji, who had passed out unconscious, sat up suddenly. She stroked her temples, her expression was calm and she smiled sarcastically. Including the Qingxing kingdom, from the various gods to the monks on the mountain, to the few imperial soldiers and horses who could be said to be almost unscathed, there was an uproar and there was a lot of discussion. In particular, the generals of the two countries leading troops other than the Lu clan are all in the general mood. For them, this time the troops are dispatched. How about the thunder and rain? So it is good anyway, they have gained a share of pioneering territory for nothing. As for the merits of the war, as for the Lu clan of the Qingxing kingdom, does it count as stealing chickens without losing rice? In particular, the Jinkei faction is on the Green Peak, and with the Zhang clan of Tianchao County, isn't it a deadly feud with Zhao Fuyang? Inside a carriage, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince of Qingxing Kingdom looked at the three-way precious seal that had just been delivered, intact. What does Zhao Fuyang want to do? The old emperor looked complicated, put down a brief espionage report at hand, pondered for a long time and said, "I immediately send an order to imprison the fox demon Yu Chuanji. It must be closely guarded and there must be no mistakes." The young prince nodded and was about to get up and leave the carriage. The old emperor was worried that he didn't understand the joints. After all, it was a big deal and he couldn't go out of business, so he had to explain in detail and patiently explained, "Don't let Qingzhenjin get angry. Killed this Hahuan mountain fox Immortal. In short, remember one thing: if there is any objection on the side of Chuiqing Peak, you should say that the court will hand her over to Guanhu Academy for disposal." Yu Chuanji was carrying an account book, which clearly recorded the criminal evidence of the group of visitors who died in Fanwan House tonight: Zhang Xiangdao of Shuyue House, Mrs. Pipa the Big Demon, and Wuting Temple. The mountain Li Sang is listed here. There is a thick booklet, and the date are well documented, and then the word waiting is used. At the same time, when Zhao Fuyang was hit by Zhang Keikin's sword in Shan Jiao's real body, he once said a word to her with his heart, and the grievance between Hahuan Mountain and Zhang's family in Tianchao County ended here. Therefore, this brand new nascent soul Earth Immortal who was pretending that his realm was not stable from the beginning to the end, the mountain Jiao waved his tail, and controlled his strength with extreme measure, which did not hurt Zhang Keikin's fundamentals of the Tao. Lu Chen put away this special picture of time and smiled. Looking back, it will be meaningless. Obviously, the genealogy cultivator who had the advantage on paper lost to an extremely pure Yamazawa Yeshio. Lu Chen smiled and said, "In this way Qingqian owes Lord Yingguan two favors. Heaven and earth have become their shapes, and there is no gap between day and night, and it is spring with things. The human world at night is like a young boy who takes a break for a while, and will continue to travel far away just waiting for the day." Qin Pingon didn't say anything about the fight at all, but instead asked for no reason. "Is the inspiration of Wuzhou's harmony related to your virtue? If Wuzhou relies on refining things alone, Lu, even if she has the magical power of the caster, one of the 12 high-ranking gods, she still cannot enter the 14th realm. No matter how many immortal soldiers there are, she still can't make further progress. At most, she is the first person to help her stay in the Ascension realm. Or as time goes by, the distance will become larger and larger. Speak carefully. Lu Chen was taken aback by Qin Ping's calling his name without saying anything about the morality of the rivers and lakes. He quickly waved a Taoist robe sleeve and sacrificed a secretly refined talisman, so as not to be heard by the grumpy and fierce auntie in Wuzhou. Go misunderstand what conspiracy he has with Chen Pingon. Fortunately, they are not in the Qingming world and Lu Chen still has a chance to remedy it, otherwise the crotch will be full of yellow mud. Wuzhou has always been suspicious and she is patient and good and she will definitely be entangled with Headmaster Lu for hundreds of years. How dare a poor Taoist be greedy for merit? With her tenacious Taoism and excellent aptitude, she will definitely be able to enter the 14 realms or not sooner or later. Lu Chen raised his hand and rubbed his face and said bitterly, "It's just a speaker who doesn't intend to listen to someone who has a heart. So Lu Chen doesn't have any kindness and Wuzhou will never read this kind of love." Qin Pingon continued to ask, "If I meet her on a narrow road one day, will she rely on her realm and take it by force?" Because in this article Lu Chen listed a series of people who were incomplete in physical form and limbs, but who were complete in morality and morality. According to Wu Shuangjiang's statement before, the female crown of the 14th realm with the Taoist name Taiyin has now set her sights on Qin Pingon, who has execution and killing. Wu Shuangjiang also leaked the secret. If Yao Qing helped protect the Dao and reached a secret contract with Wuzhou, or she was carrying a white lotus root with a broken mountain halberd, the female national teacher of the Xianxia dynasty might not be able to cross Wuzhou. This pass. Wuzhou is indeed a ruthless person. She has refined her soul, torso, bones and flesh, and even her hair into emptiness. Thoroughly explain it, break it down and stand up. In this way she can use a realm of emptiness to carry all things. Therefore today's Wuzhou is human appearance and heavenly emptiness, which is between the most human and the gods. Lu Chen used a euphemism: if you are a complete sword cultivator in the Ascension realm, or you are on an equal footing with her realm, she will not embarrass you. If you meet on the road you will nod your head and go your own way. The implication is that as long as Qin Pingan's realm is not enough, he will definitely not be able to keep those two ancient relics of high-ranking gods against Shang Wuzhou in the future. Intuition tells Qin Pingan that as long as he goes to Qingming world, he will definitely meet Wuzhou before arriving at Baiyujing, and when the two meet, it will definitely not be too harmonious. Baiyujing's headmaster Lu is a little better. As long as anyone asks for advice humbly, Lu Chen will definitely respond with sincere words. Lu Chen stretched out his hand and grabbed a stone on the ground. The so-called formation was just a trick for the young man with the sword behind his back. The sword boy is bluffing and it is the same as the empty sheath. Even if the straw sandal boy is just a clone of Qin Pingon, how can he not know a few swordsmanship? Although it is difficult for gods to catch noon fish. Lu Chen weighed the stones and said with a smile, but that extremely hard-to-find fish that slipped through the net was still found by Pin Dao. Qin Pingon had a little accident and found his whereabouts so quickly? Lu Chen resolutely said, "The poor man is very accurate and his identity has been confirmed. This son will be a great weapon." Qin Pingon asked, "Do you plan to take him as an heir and bring him back to Baiyujing to cultivate in Nanhua City, or to keep him in Haoran and let Chao Rong and other disciples help him watch?" Lu Chen threw the stone in his hand out of the cliff. "I can't eat hot tofu in a hurry. He has come to a fork in the road now. What should he do next? Pindao wants to wait and see." After a moment of silence, Lu Chen looked strange, waved his hand and shook it, just like chasing mosquitoes as if he wanted to dispel the haze in his heart and asked casually, "Don't ask who." It turned out that Zhao Fiang of Hehuan Mountain first kept a portrait of Lu Zhangjiao privately and built a lotus Taoist crown. He sincerely thought that one day he would be able to travel the world as a Taoist priest in the line of Baiyujing Nanhuiqing. Then there is Qing Qian, the contemporary head of the Jinkei faction. Because of these two little things he has murderous intentions towards Zhao Fiang. On that day next to the old patriarch of the Zhang family in Chao County, a gridded sentence, "There is no such thing, this is why. Those who obey will die for their sins." Pindao, thank you. Does this count as the upper beam is not straight and the lower beam is crooked? There's no reason it can't be. The poor road is out of the house and has always formed a good relationship and maintained a decent body. Qin Pingon shook his head, but instead asked about the talisman that Lu Chen had held before. Does this talisman have a name? Lu Chen put his mind away and said with a smile. The tentative name is See You Back, which is the exact opposite of opening the bow without turning back the arrow. In fact, regret medicine is also a good name. Lu Chen smiled and asked, if you had known that Zhao Fiang would do this, would you have come here with your real body? Qin Pingon nodded. Lu Chen is well aware of this and has a doubt that has troubled Qin Pingon for a long time. Unfortunately, after so many years, there is still no teacher who can convince himself or the teacher to persuade the students. That's why Qin Pingon asked Zhou Xian before. Lu Tai's question, I hope to solve it from a different angle. One thing, the same process and the same result, different people do it, what is the difference? It's a pity that Lu Tai, the old and rude, answered the question, but Zhou Qiu was worried and did not want to speak her true thoughts. Lu Chen said softly, a person who is not strong enough in his heart, frequent self-examination and self-denial will only make people weaker. Be content with being a person and know enough about doing things, that's all. Qin Pingon squatted down, took out the red wine gourd that had been dependent on each other for many years, took a sip of wine and said indifferently, be careful. Lu Chen turned his head to look, and in front of him was Qin Pingon with a slender figure and a clear air, wearing a golden crown, a blue gauze robe, holding a white jade Ganoderma lucidum and stepping on cloud shoes. With the boy in straw sandals carrying a sword in the Fenwan mansion, the two sides do not talk about appearance but temperament, and they are also completely different. The term reborn was originally a Daoist language, and it is very suitable for them when used in them. Every avatar of Qin Pingon has some deep meaning. For example, the one in front of him is probably the original appearance of an earth immortal cultivator. If the natal porcelain was not broken when he was young, or he left Lizidongshan early, being absorbed by Zhongmen and Immortal Mansion as the direct descendant of the ancestral hall, or just waiting for the weather to change later, the young man in the mud bottle alley can take advantage of the situation, seize a few opportunities of Taoism, and practice all the way smoothly, gradually fade away. The earthy breath was replaced by a full body of Dao Qi. And the thin sword bearer was probably a young man from Ni Pingxiang who had never spent money on a mountain. He simply relied on a boxing manual to enter the room, and his fists were on the upper body, so he embarked on a pure martial arts path. In the arena, one might join the army like a certain bearded ranger, wandering around and then return to the roots, or learn from a certain song predecessor and accumulate a family business early. As for the temple in Yuzhou, the scholar in the Confucian robe, who is holding a mountain stick and climbing the mountain to watch the clouds rise, may be a reading seed who has neither practiced Taoism nor martial arts. They can fly high, return home in fine clothes and shine on the lintel, or they may be depressed or relegated or resign, return to the forest in spring and enjoy the flowers and the moon. Qin Pingon was limited by the current nascent soul realm and talisman family wealth, and it was difficult for a clever woman to cook without rice, so the 7 avatars created were not high in the realm of monks and warriors. It was Lu Chen's side who was one of the 2 Qin Pingon, hiding in the shadows as the prime minister. He was willing to spend his money. He used a piece of cyan talisman paper which was extremely scarce, so he could create a golden body. Jing Wufu's skeleton and equipment, I believe that the other Qin Pingon should be a golden elixir. If Lu Chen didn't guess, it must be a burly 5'5" and 3 thick rough appearance which makes people look like the kind of mess. The arrogant man is actually a chi trainer with several flying swords. On the other hand, Pomo Peak is a mountain fairy who looks like a fairy. If anyone thinks that the monk's body is ugly weak, trying to fight in close quarters will only fall down the stove. Perhaps in the eyes of the monks at the top of the mountain, Qin Pingan's cautious actions are all funny tricks. The monks on the mountain who can see the truth, except for the monks in Wuzhou who had a great road dispute with Qin Pingan, are an exception. If they were replaced by ordinary ascension realms, there were also a few young hidden, who could not engrave the city head. Seriously. The title of hidden official carries a lot of weight, especially the prefix young, is even more terrifying. Just like the Battle of Qin Pingan in Tuyue Mountain, on the top of the mountain the victory and defeat have been divided, the dust has settled, and the culprit of the big demon who is responsible for guarding Tuyue Mountain, this hidden ascension realm sword cultivator, a head wizard, is inevitable that he will be unwilling to cut, and feel that Qin Pingan relies on a realm obtained out of thin air, and relies on that long sword and pure divinity, which belongs to the incompetence of victory. At that time, Qin Pingon only used a truth to convince the first disciple of the great ancestor of Tuyue Mountain. Generally speaking, if Qin Pingon had his leisurely age, he would not have seen Qin Pingan's people in that questioning sort. At this moment the night was dark, and Zhao Fiang in the dense mansion showed a majestic Dharma image, standing on the temple of falling Yuanshan, and said angrily, "Qing Qian Zhang Qiong, don't deceive people too much." After careful planning so far, everyone knows that there are thousands and thousands of calculations. No matter how Zhao Fiang can't count the retreat, he is about to officially refine the mountain. On the far side of the stone cliff, the real head of the Jinkei faction and the head of the Zhang family in Tianchao County only felt that Zhao Fuzuan was very reasonable. Lu Chen smiled and said, "One side was scolded righteously, and the other side was scolded not to be wronged and was beaten upright." In the sea of clouds, a Xianxia ferry disappeared, and the ancestor of Xiangjuan took Wen Jingshan and the old woman on board, used a magic power to shrink the earth, and came to the gate of Hehuan Mountain. Wen carefully saw the acacia tree that was densely packed with insects, and then raised his head to look at Zhao Fiang's angry Dharma image on the top of the mountain, and said with a smile, "What kind of trouble is this?" The ancestor of Xiangjuan still did not explain his intention to them, and he did not choose to ride the wind, but just hiked up the mountain. A young accountant stood on the table and looked at the three unwelcome, uninvited guests. The accountant winced, his teeth chattered, and he was speechless. Wen carefully released a little fist, and there was a sound of firecrackers on the mountain road. From time to time he glanced at the top of the mountain and asked casually, "Master Xiangjuan, such a notorious Jindan Yeshio anyway, is full of evil, why not kill him?" The patriarch Xiangjuan remained silent, trying his best to stabilize his mind. The patriarch, who could only pay homage to one or two through the portraits hung in the Lingfei temple in the past, may now be somewhere in the mountains, so she couldn't help but be very nervous. The memory is still fresh. After she became a direct disciple when she was young, Master Chao Rong took her to the Zhu Shirtang for the first time to pay homage to the hanging statue of the ancestor. Respect is God's. But it's also possible that the patriarch just issued a decree to her master and asked her to come here with one carefully. Maybe that headmaster is far away in the sky, watching the mountains and rivers here? She took a deep breath and reminded the two behind her with a heartfelt voice, "We'll talk about it when we arrive at Fanwan Mansion." The old woman is even more worried, and she doesn't know why the ancestor of the ancestors around her chose to settle here. However, Xingzi, who is the master of Qingjing Peak, has thought about it, and his Jingxian temple has a clear conscience, and he has no entanglement with Zhao Fiang, the mountain master here. In this case he is not afraid of the shadow. With Zhao Fiang, as long as you see tricks and tricks, you must not be without 300 taels of silver here. Zhao Fiang looked down and was shocked and worried at first. He recognized the old woman from Jingxianen's lineage, and then added the Taoist crown on the head of the female cultivator. Zhao Fiang quickly settled down in his heart, hesitated for a moment, and put away the Dharma image. Putting on a Taoist robe and wearing the lotus crown that has been treasured for many years, he only took off the Taoist crown very quickly, and only showed himself in the attire of a Taoist priest from the Jingxianen lineage. He came to the mountain road and made a bow. He said respectfully, "Zhao Fiang, a disobedient disciple of Jingxianen's lineage, pays respect to the ancestor of Shangzong Xiangjuan, Master Wen Xian, and to the master of Xingfeng." Patriarch Xiangjuan frowned as if puzzled. No wonder Zushi Lu asked himself to come to Hehuan Mountain, hoping to help Zhao Fiang get out of the siege. At this point, Xingzi immediately explained to the patriarch Xiangjuan, saying that Zhao Fiang was indeed a disciple of the Jinkei sect in his early years, and he was also a private disciple of a certain master. Yang's root identity made a big fuss, and Zhao Fiang didn't want to hurt the reputation of the uncle, so he left the Jinkei faction in a fit of rage. The patriarch of Xiangjuan nodded, said nothing about it, and said, "The few of us first cast a blindfold and go to the mansion to take a seat." She then asked Zhao Fiang to fetch the gift list. Even though Zhao Fiang was in a state of impatience, he still remained silent. He went to the foot of the mountain to ask Mr. Accountant for a booklet, and then returned to the mountain road, bowing his head and offering it with both hands. During this round trip, Zhao Fiang guessed that as the host, the reason why he couldn't move the mountain was because he was manipulated by the female crown, the master of the Taoist palace. Remind yourself that you don't need to fight. Don't you want to hurt each other's friendship, with Qing Qian, who is also a disciple of Lingfei Palace, going down the mountain? Patriarch Xiangjuan flipped through the ceremony very quickly. Holding the booklet, she deliberately chose an angle. When she turned to the last page, she was suddenly shocked. Quickly closing the booklet, she sighed softly in her heart, but her eyes became quietly hot. Really? In the last column, the names of the 3 guests are written: Qinren, Xianxia, and Daoist Zhou Xian. According to the gift list, the gift is spending money on 2 snows per hand? As expected of his own ancestor Lu, he really likes to play the world. I just don't know where Qinren and Xianxia are sacred. Could it be that the female master under the pseudonym Xianxia, Peiqian of Luopa Mountain? In the same way, Qinren, is that the pseudonym of the young hidden official? In an instant, the women's crown of the upper 5 realms appeared a little dazed. When she looked down again, there was only Daoist Zhou Xian on the gift list. The ancestor of Xiangjuan, who was stripped of some memories, didn't realize it. She just put the book in her sleeve silently and said, "The 3 of us are visiting tonight, and Zhao Fuzuan doesn't have to make a public statement." Zhao Fiang bowed his head and took the lead, saying, "It is not necessary, it is not." After they entered the Fanwan mansion, the patriarch Xiangjuan asked Zhao Fiang to take care of her own affairs. When she finally stopped, she just glanced at it and was a little disappointed just because she could not see the Patriarch Lu. Yes, Patriarch Lu. If she really wanted the real person not to show her face, she would only meet each other without knowing each other. At this moment she only felt that in the banquet halls, everyone seemed to be like Lu Zushi. When Zhao Fuyang returned to the family ancestral hall, the Taoist companion Yu Chuanji was unable to keep his soul, and he couldn't make it through the mountain. A few Zhao Yan in the U formation were also at a loss, and they looked at each other without saying a word. The patriarch Xiangjuan thought for a while and chose a relatively secluded side hall. He took Wen Jingshan and Xing Zi to sit at an empty table. On the adjacent table sat a young man with a sword on his back, whose eyes were higher than the top. It was a young woman with her hair in a bun with freckles on her face, a bony ghost who looked like a scribe in a crane cloak, and a bald-headed monk with a barely their appearance. Regarding the secret biography on the top of the mountain, the headmaster Lu of Baiyujing has a great relationship with the real person of the white bone. Could it be that the seemingly low-level dead bone at the next table is some kind of hint from the ancestor, right? Xiangjuan couldn't help but looked at it and counted his eyes. The scribe in the crane cloak smiled and nodded to the strange female cultivator. The patriarch of Xiangjuan became more and more suspicious. Could it be this person in front of him, really? The old woman sat upright and carefully guessed the intention of the patriarch Xiangjuan for this trip. After Wen carefully sat down, she was even more confused, and she gathered her voice and said in a secret voice, "Patriarch Xiangjuan, what is this for?" In fact, Xiangjun didn't have a definite idea at the moment. She was only thinking about whether the Hechuang scribe was or not. She had to perfunctorily say, "I have my own plans here, you can eat and drink as you please." After hesitating for a long time, she dared to speak in a calm tone as much as she could, and asked the ghost in the grave with a string of military talismans and jade pendants hanging from her belt, "Dare to ask, who are you?" Palace Master Bai found out that he was actually approached by a young and beautiful female cultivator. He just thought it was time to move and he felt itchy, but in the end he believed that he had read the Book of Sages and habitually put on airs and coughed a few times. Dao Chonglu showed a sour text that he seemed to be able to learn and use it by chance, so he casually wrote a sentence with the female cultivator. "When we meet by chance, why do you need to ask your name, and you have doubts about wine, and you should also doubt yourself?" Sword of Coming Chapter 1022. Pei Qian whispered, "Master, 1 jade and 2 golden pills." Because the master around him is only one of the 9 clones, limited by the rank of the talisman material, and the martial arts level is not enough, Pei Qian served as master's eyes and ears. Qin Pingon didn't squint, hiccuped, leaned against the back of the chair, also used the method of gathering sound into a line and joked, "Then they are a veritable dragon across the river." Pei Qian wondered, "Is it the passing monk who traveled here?" Qin Pingon said, 80% of it is the handwriting of Headmaster Lu. Pei Qian nodded. Was it a stick? In fact, she had already noticed the movements of the 3 ancestors of Xiangjuan. When they entered the Fanwan mansion, Pei Qian began to pay attention to the weight of their steps and the length of their breathing. When the 3 monks appeared in a corner corridor of the circular banquet room Dao, even the trick of changing appearance and attire falls in Pei Qian's eyes, describing it as false. Pei Qian just glanced at them a few times, and then he saw the state of mind of the female crown of the upper 5 realms, which was quite strange. He saw a vast, incomparably empty patriarch's hall, with a slender girl as small as a mustard seed. Looking at the back of a Taoist priest as majestic as a mountain in front, and this back holding incense in both hands, the incense curls as if going straight to the heaven, the Taoist priest is paying homage to the only hanging portrait of the patriarch. The portrait is painted by a young Taoist. This hanging statue can be called a giant system. The portrait of a Taoist priest has the might of standing in the sky, and it also sets off the Taoist priest who was originally like a mountain. The crowns on the heads of the three are all in the shape of lotus crowns. Obviously, in the heart of this accomplished female crown she is still smaller than the sect, and the person holding incense and respecting the statue in front of her is higher than the sect, and the patriarch in that portrait is even bigger than the sky. And in the center of the old woman's heart lake, there was an island, and there stood a majestic golden fairy with a bright red fire dragon wrapped around one arm, and a green water snake wrapped around one arm, and lightning flashed and thundered in the air. Is it the figurative appearance of the so-called golden immortal in the old woman's mind? In a man's state of mind, there is a wood-carved puppet that jumps indefinitely between mountains and rivers, like an ancient real person crossing the mountains and the sea, and a clay sculpture figure who is cross-legged in meditation. Qin Pingan hesitated for a moment, then asked with a smile, "Have you seen their state of mind? Are there any unusual and commendable sights?" Pei Qian smiled and asked the master to wait for a while before quickly reviewing his memory. It was like throwing a rod for fishing. When he lifted the rod he was looking at the bait, such as the bait that Pei Qian prepared for the female crown. The old woman is the golden fairy, and the man is the puppet ridge. So if master hadn't asked about this, Pei Qian would have forgotten it after seeing it, leaving only a vague impression to determine the roughness of the other party's morality and the rough distinction between enemy and self. In short, it doesn't matter what their identities are, Pei Qian only needs to make sure of one thing so that he knows what he needs, and he needs to deliver a few punches with a few boundaries. With these clues at this moment within Pei Qianxing Lake, the memories that had been sealed up by her own can be restored to its full extent, just like 3 old scrolls were reopened by the master and you can see at a glance. Pei Qian again confirmed their identities and said, "Master, she is the patriarch of Xiangyuan of Lingfei Palace. The Taoist name is Dongting and the proud disciple of Tianjun Chao Rong. Knowing the means, I was in Luojing, the capital of my company, and I inadvertently heard a gossip from a Qi practitioner, saying that what she is best at is actually asking God to come to the truth. Saying that she entered the jade purity from the nascent soul realm, which was unintentional and demonic. Just because this woman, the true monarch of the Taoist sect, when she was in retreat her heart was sincere, and she entered the mysterious state of heaven and man. She once invited Baiyu Jingnan. Mrs. Wei of Huaqing came, and Mrs. Wei crossed the world and went straight down to help Xiangjuan to destroy his demons and overcome the difficulties. It is said that Mrs. Wei also led Xiangjuan to visit Baiyujing, and sleepwalked on the 12th floor of the 5 cities. There is no evidence to investigate such secrets. It is reasonable to say that there is no third person to know. Most of the monks on the mountain are talking nonsense and chasing the shadows. Just like Pei Qian was in Luopa Mountain when he was a child, the old cook always spit out when he heard Qin Lingjun talking about horror or mysterious mountain secrets. He always wanted to demolish the stage. Were you there at the time? Hearing this, Qin Pingan said, "This senior on the mountain is so wonderful, and it is most likely the real thing to be able to invite Mrs. Wei to go to Nanhua City. In the heart, it is a good thing that the patriarch's hall is empty and free of excess, which explains that she said, her mind is pure and pure. On the way to practice she doesn't rely on external things and she has no distractions. It's just that in her heart the status of master and patriarch is too lofty, and at the same time she underestimates herself. The combination of the two means that her Dao Exen is still not tough enough. I am afraid this is the soil that breeds demons, and only Madame Weisfulwan comes to the truth." Pei Qian, who didn't think much about it at first, thought about it for a moment, then nodded, and as expected it was the master's way. A Taoist true monarch who ranks among the 5 realms like Xiangyuan patriarch. If she despises herself too much, it is reasonable to say that it is very easy for her to appear to be a demon when she retreats in the Yuanying realm, such as the incarnation of Tianjun Chao Rong or the patriarch Lu Chen. Xiangjuan has absolutely no chance of winning over that demon. On the way of the cultivator climbing the mountain after passing through layers of calamities he can rely on Taoism, but only to pass the test of the heart, especially the confrontation with the inner demon, can only rely on a pure Taoism. The other two, if you guessed correctly, one is Wuxia from Lingfei Palace. He is in the Golden Core realm when he is young. Besides qi refining, he is still a pure martial artist. The other old woman is Xingzi from the Qingjing Peak of the Jinkei faction. She was born in the line of Jingxianan. She competed for the position of headmaster and lost to the younger Qing Qian. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Wen carefully? That genius martial artist nicknamed Wen Lang?" One of the clones, the old-fashioned acquaintance of the Bamboo Branch School on the side of Tsayu Mountain, has long heard of Wen Shen. Ask people about boxing, but there is no defeat. Pei Qian was a little embarrassed. Wu Fu is true. As for whether a genius is a genius or not, it's hard to say. Pei Qian is indeed a little awkward. To say that this Wen Xian is not too young, half 140. Not just a far-flung warrior. If he is a genius, what am I? Can it still be a genius among geniuses? What about Master and Xiaoxia? While the master and the apprentice were chatting, the ancestor of Xiangyuan at the next table, she just stared at the withered bone ghost in the appearance of the crane cloak scribe. She couldn't help but think lightly. She remembered that when she was young she learned Taoism and completed her elixir early. The master once taught her a true formula that could be explained in various ways. To practice qi for longevity, if you want a person to be immortal, you must first die, then you must die and then live again. You will get a truth. Could it be that this patriarch, the patriarch, came to Hehuan Mountain this time because of a private request from the master? And the patriarch made a special trip here to give himself advice in a manner similar to the real person of White Bones, which is equivalent to teaching an immortal formula. But the last time Mrs. Wei from Nanhua City helped Luan down, didn't she say that only when she became an immortal would she be true again and have the opportunity to go to Nanhua City to meet Master Lu? Headmaster and headmaster. What is headmaster? Naturally, a Taoist priest who is in charge of Taoism in the world can be called headmaster. At that time Mrs. Wei took Xiangyuan to sleep in Baiyujing with Luan, and did not see the patriarch Lu Qin, but outside the many Taoist palaces, castles and auspicious scenes of immortals, Xiangyuan just glimpsed, and saw a man wearing a feather robe from a distance. Middle-aged Taoist priest. Just looking at him, Xiangjun immediately woke up from the dream. After waking up, she suddenly realized that she was already in the Jade Pure realm. At this moment, Xiangjun certainly did not dare to take the risk of asking and verifying the identity of the other party. After thinking about it, she had come up with more than 10 kinds of opening remarks. But since Sushi Lu did not want to show his true face, she would. I had to play stupid, trying my best to calm my heart, and said with a slight trembling, "The Taoist's words are so profound and unbelievable. Palace Master Bai is worthy of being in the officialdom. He is not very good at cultivating and his ability to observe words is not low." Seeing the awe that is hard to hide on the face of the female cultivator, Palace Master Bai began to be complacent, using only a few words. Then shocked a handsome beauty show with a good temperament. 3 new guests came to the side hall. Because Manager Yu was away, he was busy trying to win over human relations elsewhere. Yu Iyo and Yu Rong, who were solely responsible for the hospitality of the side hall, followed the rules and brought them 3 pots of secret brew. Fairy wine. As a member of the upper 5 realms, Xiangjun is naturally not afraid of the fox charm and mellows hands and feet in the wine, but he dislikes the filth of the wine and he didn't touch the pot of wine. Just still drinking and drinking non-stop. Not only is the Taoist golden elixir, but also has a martial arts golden body. When Shin doesn't have to worry about these indiscriminate methods, the drink in his stomach is instantly circulated in his body like a river. A mouthful of pure infuriating qi burns, and transpires into mist, and is then pulled into a remote qi mansion, where all the pink miasma is detained and sealed. Pure infuriating is like a general who guards this place and can be killed at any time. Ended. Anyway, I was idle, and when Shin quickly focused on the pair of thin and slender maidservants in the Fanwan mansion. Rongyu, it's just that for some reason Wen Lang, who has always been unfavorable in the journey of love between men and women, hit a wall here tonight. It needs to be known that Wen Jing can never treat himself badly, and the trick he used tonight is to become a Qin Jun Erlang, who is famous for his jade tree facing the wind in a certain country under the mountain. In fact, the reason for this was not that they pretended to be arrogant or that they didn't like beauty, but that in their eyes the appearance of the guest was really unsightly, and it made people nauseated when they looked at it. Naturally, it was thanks to Daoist Lu, who changed Wen Xin's appearance and voice in the eyes of Sister Yu and Rongyu. Xingzi has a noble identity, and although he is not the contemporary head of the Jin-Ke faction, the realm and seniority of the old woman are comparable to that of the protector Zhou Xian, who has a long list of more than 20 characters. In terms of the ancestors of their respective Taoist veins, Zhou Xian's Chuiqing Peak cannot be compared with the Qingjing Peak of Zhou Xian and the Jingxian nunnery where the ancestral court is located. The old woman is a person who lives in seclusion in the mountains and devotes herself to cultivating Taoism. She is used to being quiet and can't stand this noisy environment. If it wasn't for the climb with the ancestor of Xiangjuan this time, she would never set foot here. I'm afraid that even if she went up the mountain she would only be able to eliminate demons and guard the way, slaying demons and killing ghosts. From the corner of Xiangjuan's eyes, he looked at the next table, the sword-backed boy and the female warrior on the first floor, and the key was a young monk from the lower 5 realms. The grandfather did make a wide range of friends, and it didn't matter whether the other party's status was high or low or the depth of his morality. Qin Pingon had given Pei Qian a general explanation of the inside story and origin of Hehuan Mountain. Of course, he deliberately kept some of the truth and planned to test this great disciple of the school and asked, "Do you think the crux of the existence of Hehuan Mountain lies in the where?" Pei Qian didn't need to think about it and blurted out, "Zhao Fuyang and Jin Ke sent Qing Qian and the rest in the dense house, and the rest are at best the icing on the cake and they won't affect the overall situation." Qin Pingon asked with a smile, "How do you say?" The old owner of the Zhang family in Tianchao County is also Jin Dan. There are also swordsmen like Zhang Kaiqin and Zhang Yujiao in the family. Are they even necessary? Pei Qian replied, "The relationship between the Hehuan mountain boundary and the nearby Qingxing kingdom's several imperial courts is good or bad. Whether the well water does not violate the river water, acquiesce Zhao Fuyang to be a local emperor or fight against each other. In the final analysis, it only depends on Qing Qian. With the ebb and flow of Zhao Fuyang's respective forces, these 2 Jindan cultivators with the best qualifications and destined to achieve the highest future achievements, no matter who is the first to enter the nascent soul realm, it will not be the current stalemate." Qin Pingon nodded. Just like in Shujian Lake, the only wild cultivator in the upper 5 realms, Lu Laoqing from Gonglu Island, who has been missing for many years, there are different opinions. Some say that Lu Laoqing has quietly fallen into the secret territory of ancient Shu where many sword immortals have left behind, and some say that Lu Laoqing is in Middle-earth Shenzhou changed its face, held a high position in a certain sect, and separated from the past Yixio career, which gave Lu Jimao the opportunity to compete for the master of Shujian Lake and the new disciple Gu Sanhe. The water dragon whose combat power is equivalent to the Yuan Ying cultivator, relying on the reckless actions of the younger disciples and the large-scale killing of the water dragon, Shakti Hu Yeshio and Lu Jimao rose from this. Otherwise it would just be an Oriole Island, which is also the Yuan Ying. Zhong Su, if he could win over a few island master allies, it would be enough for true monarch Zhejiang to eat a pot. A little further away, a little earlier and a bigger site. For example, Tong Yezhou Tongyezong Du Mao was the only ascension cultivator, and Yuguazong Sunyuan was just a fairy, which made Tongyi's mountain pattern very different. Very solid. Even if it is a tragic situation where the land is sinking and the mountains and rivers are collapsed, when the war ends and the feng shui turns, Tong Yezong was seriously injured and had to close the mountain to save himself. And because there was still Yuguazong in the south, the old order was quickly restored. Xingxianfu martial art is just to fill the gap. It's like new wine in old bottles. On the other hand, in the north, Tong Yezong lost the right to speak, and the heroes on the mountain rose together. It can be said that there is chaos, or it can be said that the business is booming. Jindingwen takes the lead and has the Tayedu covenant. When the next sect of Luopao Mountain Qingping Sword Sect was born, this situation was quickly ended. Through a new covenant, Dadu was excavated and the new pattern was strengthened. Pei Qian asked, "Master, is it possible, assuming Qing Qian is not so aggressive and giving Zhao Fuyang a few more years, he can turn this smoky Hehuan mountain into a sect similar to the Wudao sect in Zenji?" Pinging the dangerous pass, the mountains and rivers are open, making this place and the surrounding clear and graceful air connected like a post road. The yin evil miasma has changed from thick to light. The yin and yang rise and fall in one place has been changed to stable. The wind is gentle, the people and ghosts are mixed, and there is nothing wrong with each other. Based on this, Hehuan Mountain will be recognized by Guanhu Academy, and it will become Zhao Fuyang's place of preaching, a place of prosperity, And where will the future sect foundation be located? Qin Pingon nodded and said with a smile, this may be the best way. Just talking about the possibility there must be. Then Qin Pingon said, but from the moment I promised Zhang Kaiqin and Hong Yanghua of King Fufeng to participate in the Qingxing Kingdom's crown prince and crown ceremony, the Emperor Lu Chengqian, the protector of the country, and the Zhang clan of Tianchao County couldn't help Zhao Fuyang and Hehuan Mountain continue to take root here, so invisibly, this best possibility has disappeared. Pei Qian was stunned. Qin Pingon asked, since there are previous causes and consequences, is Master the culprit of this possibility of killing and killing himself? Do you have to blame yourself for this? Pei Qian was sullen and didn't know how to answer. Qin Pingon smiled and said, assuming that you don't need to blame yourself for this kind of thing, isn't it equally irresponsible? If you should blame yourself and feel guilty, can you blame others? Pei Qian scratched his face, even more embarrassed. However, she was relieved quickly and turned around to change the words of these headaches a little, and asked Chao Qingqing to listen to his answer first. Qin Pingon then said, the fact that you can spy on the scene of others' hearts and minds is a technique. There is no righteousness or evil in this technique. If you can make good use of the method, it is to walk straight and all evils will self-relieve. Pei Qian nodded. When Xiao Haiten could hide in her shelter, she was always afraid that she would learn badly. Later, when she could face the world alone, she was always worried that the world was not good. Tao follows its appearance and heaven follows its shape. It is the fault of heaven if it does not take the opposite. Lu Chen interjected coldly, not to mention the old sayings, righteous people practice evil law and evil law is right, and evil people practice right law and right law is evil. Qin Pingon couldn't help but scolded, fuck you. Lu Chen, who had been listening to the conversation between the master and the apprentice, quickly took a sip of the wine, as if he had the courage to drink the wine in one gulp, and then he dared to continue smiling, nodded vigorously and said, that's right, it's indeed a poor Daoist. Neglect. The same reason persuading Zhao Fuyang to persuade Qingquan is to persuade one person to be good, persuade one person to forgive others and forgive others, but if you use it to persuade Miss Pei it will be impossible. Come on, there is only the possibility of making a first class willing to be a second class person. There is no reason to send a second class willing to be a first class person. Just like every inch of time is worth an inch of gold, how can such a principle be wrong? It is certainly appropriate to persuade those reading seeds who have no worries about food and clothing, but it is appropriate to use it to persuade those peasants who face the lusts and turn their backs to the sky. Suspected back pain. Daoist Lu poured a glass of wine and said to himself, no wonder we all need to make a high-level wish, give our own minds, choose a high place and find a place to settle. Pei Qian said, my master and Uncle Qi are very concerned about the people's hearts and the good or bad of each moment in this world. Zhangjiao Lu has long been virtuous and virtuous. Does the world rise and fall? Lu Chen seemed a little guilty. Taoism and Taoism are still very different. Pei Qian said, it's none of my business. The young Taoist priest just took a sip of wine and seemed to be choked by Pei Qian's words, so he quickly raised his head to cover his mouth and said vaguely, no matter whether it's learning boxing or practicing qi, it's actually the same thing. The word cultivating oneself means repairing by repairing and repairing by sowing. There is a question and answer in the book, or ask the parents in trouble, the thief can save them for me. How do you feel? The answer is this unworldly grace. How can you not feel it? There is a question and answer outside the book. Since you should feel it, why report it? Besides, I have even branches and trees and I am the same body as my son. Lu Chen's three statements seem to have nothing to do with each other. They are about cultivating Taoism, about grievances and justice, and using the relationship between you and me to talk about the relationship between me and heaven and earth. Of course, it can be understood that by Yujing's headmaster Lu Chen is roughly explaining why a cultivator climbed the mountain, pointing out one of the climbing paths and the scenery after the final summit. It can also be understood that Lu Chen is following the thread of Qin Pingan's inquiries about Pei Qian, and extending out to make annotations, which is not only to justify Chen's actions in Shujian Lake, but also a further self-certification of innocence. Pei Qian. In the small town, if I, Lu Chen, did not have the red line for your master back then, Qin Pingan would definitely not be the Qin Pingan today. How did you become a master and apprentice? Can you still sit here tonight? That being the case, if you want to avenge Shulu Tuiqing, do you need to repay me with Lu Chen first? Qin Pingan smiled, getting along with Lucian. It's hard to say, but simple is easier. He figured out a trick as early as he was a teenager. He only needs to uphold the 8 characters mantra. You say what you want, I do it mine. At first, Qin Pingan didn't think that Lucian was deliberately disturbing Pei Qian's Taoism. Lucian didn't want to act like this. Besides, these seemingly bottomless words Lucian and Chao Qingqing said would probably set off a storm of waves. Feeling up and down, talking with Pei Qian about this is a little painless, but Qin Pingan still changed the subject and revealed a secret for his disciples. The strange mountain you thought you've been to is actually located in the bewilderment outside the sky. The strange person I saw, the senior who accompanied you down the mountain, he was the first ancestor of the military family who was imprisoned in Yinghua for 10,000 years. Pei Qian was greatly shocked. The strange warrior on the mountain, who was quite pleasant in his impression, was actually the first ancestor of the military family who disappeared for 10,000 years? The legendary beheaded? Don't you all say how high the Taoism of the first ancestor of the military family is? How bad is his temper? Although she went up and down the mountain inexplicably, Pei Qian didn't get along with him for a long time, but she always felt that he was nice to talk to and not fierce. It's just the first ancestor of the military family. What does it have to do with the martial arts path? And why is he stationed at the top of the martial arts path that seems to be manifested as a mountain? This is the tradition of the Zhulu lineage. Cui Qing taught boxing. From feeding Qin Pingan to teaching boxing to Pei Qian, the old man didn't like to talk about boxing secrets. As for the temperament of the first ancestor of the military family, whether the punch is heavy or not, the immortal Han Yushu of Wan Yaozong who died with half a punch is probably a clear proof. Qin Pingan, who was able to hold a first-level martial artist with a limitless energy, and received the half-fist of the remaining 11 martial artists, also had the right to speak. In fact, Qin Pingan didn't want to take this half-punch just because he was always a timid little black charcoal when he was a child. After breaking through the border with the strongest martial artist, Pei Qian seemed to have a dream in a trance. In that mountain, a memory, she didn't have a face, she only remembered being around a very tall weirdo. She became bolder for the first time. He just thought it was a dream anyway. He kept asking him repeatedly if he was afraid. At about that time, the first ancestor of the military family remembered the little girl's master, a pure warrior who never made it to the top of the mountain, but his apprentices were better than blue, and then put this account on Qin Pingan's head. Lucian smiled and said, "Hey, the main dish is finally on the table." On the side of the mountain gate, the swarms of infiltrative insects that flocked to the acacia tree like a tide before have receded like a tide, and instead there is a white air in the night with threads and threads from bottom to top. This is neither earth nor earth. The eerie white mist that is not a miasma fills the Fengla town at the foot of the mountain, and then spreads and covers the entire Hehuan mountain. Outside the 2 mansions, the dents and the powder pills, the dust and mist are all over the sky, and it is difficult to distinguish the characters within a short distance. In addition, there are still grains of golden light shining brightly from the family ancestral hall located in the falling kite mountain, suddenly falling from midair to the ground, as small as a luan running along the ground. The golden light, condensed as large as a wheel, suddenly cracked and sputtered when it opens. It looks like a rainbow, like a ray of sunshine, and the falling golden light is entangled with the rising white air. At the same time, the 2 princes of Hehuan Mountain finally appeared together, attended the banquet, and personally presided over the wedding banquet tonight. This made all the guests relieved. Otherwise they would really worry about Zhao Fiyang's ill prediction, such as whether it was related to that day. The Zhang clan of Chao Jun colluded, took them all in one pot, and sold them to the court of the Lu clan in the Qingxing kingdom. Yu Chuanji has quietly removed the Fenwan mansion's romantic tent, and those yellow warblers who fly like weaving a shuttle have also taken back. Zhao Fuyang's expression was solemn, and the moment he opened his mouth, it was extremely bad news. As soon as I got the information, the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom joined forces with 2 surrounding emperors, together with the Zhang clan of Tianchao County, to secretly dispatch troops on the borders of various countries. Secretly assembled, Hehuan Mountain was besieged on a large scale tonight. I believe they are already on the march. Because on the road, there are a large number of mountain and water gods helping to open up the road, not to mention the cultivator, but only to say that the 3 elite soldiers and horses of the imperial court are advancing so fast that it should not be underestimated, and they will attack the foot of the mountain by tomorrow morning at the latest. Fengla Town. In Fengla Town, before that, Those unfortunate Dongfu dojos that block the 3 routes will only be swept away by them effortlessly. If you want to say that you rush back to preside over the overall situation at this time, it can be yes, I will definitely not. Don't stop me. But I left Hahuan Mountain before and went to Pomo Peak to meet with Zhou Xian and Zhang Kaiqin, but I didn't reach an agreement. They are so mobilized that the 5 sacred mountains of various countries, and all the righteous gods of the rivers and rivers, have all been dispatched to make such a big battle, not to mention the casualties and damages of the final attack on Hahuan Mountain. Just the military salaries consumed by this trip are a large sum of immortal money. Naturally, I will make up for it with me on Hahuan Mountain and with everyone here. If you think I am alarming and deliberately stranded you in Hahuan Mountain, now you can go down the mountain, but I have to put the ugly words in front of me. It is easy to go down the mountain tonight, but if you want to go up the mountain tomorrow, it will be difficult to seek shelter with the dense and powdery mansion. The originally noisy banquet halls were deadly silent at first. Needles could be heard falling, and there were only 1 or 2 untimely wine burps. This bad news is like a bolt from the blue. After a while, the nest exploded in an instant. Heroes from all walks of life were clamoring, talking a lot, and most of them scolding mothers, like the immortal Heilung and the burly man who was a 6-level warrior, slamming the table. It's not a thing to scold that Qing Qian for being vicious, and he also scolds that Zhang Kaiqin what would happen if she fell into her own hands, and it was like Palace Master Wedgeling Bai who was so sluggish and speechless for a long time. As for the 3 Zhang Xiangdao Hujuan of Shiyue Mansion, they were all dumbfounded. Didn't they read the almanac when they went out? How come there has been one wave after another, and the dragon palace of the Shuifu has been overturned by the old man? Why should it be worse and worse? Zhao Fuzu and Yu Fujuan, do we just stay in this Wuding mountain and wait until we die? What's the difference between drinking the beheading wine and slaughtering the neck? You are the hosts and the leaders of the entire Hahuan Mountains. You have to help lead the way and find a way out for everyone, right? People are dead and it's a big deal to fight with those immortal masters and officials. It's so strange, the old man of the Lu family and the other 2 have been sitting on the dragon chair for a few days, and their buttocks have not been warmed. Are all of them brain water? What? When it comes to seeking money in war since ancient times, the troops and horses have not moved food and grass first, and when the drum of war is sounded, it is 10,000 taels of gold. In terms of land grabs, the Hahuan Mountains, which are thousands of miles in diameter, are notoriously poor mountains, bad waters and ghostly places. Those who settled down here to open up caves and camps are either demons or ghosts, causing the heaven and earth to be covered with a strong evil spirit. The turbid air, the miasma, and the foul smell for Yishio, it is good to say that he has his own means to strip out the spiritual energy, but the mortal master in the world only to say how many people from the world in Fengla town at the foot of the mountain have longevity? And those immortal masters who are accustomed to lying down and enjoying happiness, even if they seize this land, what can they do, each with fine skin and tender meat, golden branches and jade leaves, can withstand this guilt? It's just tasteless. The imperial courts and Jinkai factions of various countries and the gods of mountains and rivers expel the turbid air, hold water and land dharma meetings, open the altar and fast and how to settle accounts. All countries are a loss-making business. Many guests have begun to speculate that it is because Zhao Fuyang has brought disaster to Qiyu. Is it possible that this manor has secretly done some wrathful deeds, which caused the Lu family's several imperial courts to be angry at the same time? Besides, the 3-way national treasure seal is secretly hidden in the treasure house of the Dense House, and you are not willing to hand it over to the Lu family of the Qingxing Kingdom? Is it possible to get rid of Zhao Fuyang and Na Yuchunji together so that we can settle down? I just had this idea and after thinking about it again I gave up my mind. I didn't say the 2 Jindan Earth Immortals. I only said that even if I succeeded by luck I would follow up with the Jinkai faction Qingqian and Tianchao County Zhang. How to deal with it is a huge problem. Just thinking about it will give you a splitting headache. It is really not good at playing officialdom. After all, even if I haven't experienced it I've heard 1 or 2. There is a patriarch's hall on the mountain and the court officials below the mountain like to talk around and the words in the fog, but they don't like to speak human words. Besides, it is hard to say whether the other party will be demolished by crossing the river or not. With those immortal masters who like to face each other in person and behind the scenes, there is no doubt that they will definitely be able to do it. How could the cultivators be soft-hearted when dealing with their gang of incompetent Shan Zai Xiu? What counts as killing a few more? The Black Dragon Immortal Monarch, who used to be a local goddess of water, frowned, groaned for a moment and asked Zhao Fiyang in his heart, "Zhao Fuzuan, is it possible that several forces are bluffing their true intentions? Or do you want us to bow our heads, ask for peace and cede land for indemnity without costing a single soldier?" In addition, for example, the Zhang family in Tianchao County, who was defeated and retreated before, suffered a big loss at the hands of Zhao Fuzuan and was planted. Somersault after this time. It's good to be on the mountain and find some ground. In fact, the implication is to bet on whether Qing Qian, Zhang Qiong and the others will accept it as soon as they are ready. So, it is not impossible to negotiate. Cede land? The surrounding landscapes of Hehuan Mountain can be allocated out money? Tonight in Hehuan Mountain, there are quite a few cave houses with wealthy families and rich treasury. I remember that in the territory of Huang Tingua, a vassal of Dali, there was a river who was not too high in gold and jade genealogy, but he said a well-known golden and jade good saying, as the so-called dead Taoist friends do not die poor Taoists. Zhao Fiyang said in a heartfelt voice, "To be honest, Qing Qian, Zhang Qiong and the others have a great appetite. They are determined to eat our dumplings and they don't mind if they burn their mouths." If it is said that Yi Xiu acts without restraint and does not speak a little bit of justice, then the temple calculations between countries will have morality at all? The demon king Tang Kun on the ape rode with blue veins appearing on the back of his hands and arms, trembling like an earthworm, raised his head and drank a whole pot of Xianxia wine, then smashed the pot on the ground and shattered it. It laughed loudly and said, "We just need to occupy Hehuan Mountain, obey the orders of the two rulers and kill them, gods and immortals who claim to be orthodox." With such stern and arrogant words, he thought in his heart that he had a good relationship with a new mountain who won the title of the imperial court of a country a few years ago. I turned my back on the battle and dared not hope to kill an earth immortal like Zhao Fiyang. I looked for an opportunity to slaughter such a thing as Li Dang. Can I use the military exploits to exchange for a wealth? Referred by a friend to help ease the cheeks with a certain imperial court, and to be a guardian mountain under the command of a certain Zhaoguoshan monarch? Standing in the center of the circle in the center of the corridor, Zhao Fiyang moved his footsteps, clasped his fists with both hands and saluted with all the guests and then continued to say aloud, "Don't worry everyone, let someone from Zhao come one by one. First of all, everyone is very happy. Strange, why did you choose to encircle and suppress our Hehuan Mountain at this time? The reason is actually very simple. Emperor Lu of Qingxing Kingdom and Qing Qian, the real person protecting the country, in order to allow that prince to successfully inherit the throne in the future, this time in the crown ceremony, please come. A distinguished guest of sufficient weight. As for the identity of the other party, according to a covert espionage I just got, there are two theories for the time being. There is also a saying that there is someone from the Jiang clan in Yunlin who is willing to attend the ceremony. I guess no matter who it is, they may have made a request in private, requesting that the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom or the Jinke faction Hehuan Mountain must be eradicated. Lu Chen couldn't help laughing and teased with his heart. Except for not being brave enough, there is nothing wrong with Zhao Fujian's statement. It is reasonable and reasonable. Qin Pingon couldn't help laughing, and Zhao Fiyang is not full of feces. Even if it spreads to the ears of Shengdazong and Yunlin Jiang, I am afraid that it is not a framed thing but it is a good word. The old woman asked in her heart, "Patriarch Xiangjun, what Zhao Fiyang said, is it really true?" Xiangjun thought for a moment. "I'm afraid it's not groundless. If you want to talk about Qing Qian and Zhang Qiong, it's not a strange thing to ask a certain patriarch of Shengao sect. Qing Qian and Zhang Qiong both made military exploits in the battlefield of Dali accompanying capital. When carefully crossed Erlang's legs, leaned back on the chair and clasped the back of his head with both hands. He didn't use his heart to speak but lowered his voice a little. "Children, why don't you just move out the sword immortals like Xingyang Mountain Bamboo Emperor and Fengliuan Yellow River?" The old woman smiled and said, "The owner of the mountain Bamboo Emperor is now too busy to take care of himself, and he is reluctant to go down the mountain. After all, the word watching is very harsh to the swordsmen of Xingyang Mountain. Yes. As for the sword Immortal Yellow River, I heard that it seems to have gone to the wild world and rushed to the battlefield. It is indeed a hero and admirable. It is also a sword immortal, even though the Bamboo Emperor is a level higher than the Yellow River and Fengliuan. But through the tone of the old woman she can completely hear her disdain for Xingyang Mountain and her sincere admiration for the Yellow River. When pouted carefully, since it's all to scare people, why don't we move out of the old patriarch of Fengxue temple if it really doesn't work? Let's just point it out, don't we have a hidden official in Beipingzu? In this way, wouldn't it be more fun? The more I think about it, the more interesting it becomes. The young hidden officer is from the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and the Great Wall of Sword Qi has been slaughtering for 10,000 years. Isn't he the one who likes to kill demons the most? Tonight in Hehuan Mountain, the number of ghosts and spirits is roughly divided into half. Will it be possible that half of the goods will be frightened on the spot just by hearing about the word hidden official? Wen turned his head carefully because he noticed the freckled woman with ball-shaped hair in a bun at the table next door. Looking at herself, her appearance and demeanor seemed like a smile but not a smile. The girl looks average but her ears are pointed. When Xian smiled and nodded to her and then said to herself, I am Zhao Fiang, I will definitely move out of the hidden official, so this Hehuan Mountain, no matter how people's hearts are different before. Different, each has a ghost, don't they all have to be twisted into a rope, and if you are crazy you will have to kill a path? Otherwise, it will fall into the hands of the young hidden official surnamed Qin in Luopao Mountain, and you will know it with your butt. Cultivating gold elixir and earth immortal. One of the little scoundrels who go to the mountains, one counts as one who can settle down a little better. Patriarch Xianxia has been paying careful attention to the expression of the palace master by. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed the young monk, grinning brightly and giving a thumbs up to Wen. Wen carefully smiled and clasped his fists back with the bald monk. I won the prize. Mrs. Pipa, named Tianlai Cave in the cave, was inspired by her boudoir friend Yuchuanji, so she asked a question that was actually very important, but unfortunately almost no one thought of it for the time being. Dare to ask Zhao Fujuan Yu Daoyu they are here. The next time we send troops, are there any gentlemen and sages from Guanhu Academy who will supervise the battle record? This question was raised by Mrs. Pipa in public, and the several living rooms were silent again in an instant, and the atmosphere did not dare to take a breath. Zhao Fiang smiled and said, Fortunately in misfortune, I can be sure that this siege was not the Academy's decision. Mrs. Pipa asked Yuchuanji in her heart, Is there really no Academy involved? Yuchuanji smiled and said, Don't worry, no. You think, if there are really gentlemen and sages in the Academy, what else can my husband and I do other than capture them with our hands? Mrs. Pipa was relieved when she heard the words. Indeed, there have been disputes over the years in the Hehuan Mountains. To say something unpleasant is nothing more than the behavior of ghosts eating ghosts and dogs biting dogs. Secretly touting those monstrous spirits from the mountains and wild or local heroic spirits. Don't you think that even if the Academy knows about such trivial matters, it will not give heavy responsibility? Otherwise, if it really means the Confucian Academy, you don't have to think about it, you can just wait for death. The rules of the Academy today are not as loose as they used to be. For example, it is like the Daoist dynasty, who was a country and a continent, used an iron fist and means to completely ban prostitution temples in one continent. Many times there is no need for Dali to enshrine the monks in person, and the civil officials of the local vassal countries only need to hold an edict issued by the ritual department of the suzerain state. And they can let the gods of the temple relocate the gods on their own initiative, and are forced to move to other places, because before that there is no lack of previous lessons. All the gods of mountains and rivers who dare to violate the prohibition and disobedience, no matter who they are in front of them regardless of their status, all have their golden bodies smashed to pieces. Let's just say that now, in the southern countries of Aquarius, how many old gods have been sunk in the water and buried in the mountains with only a trace of their divinity left, still can't overturn the case and still can't see the sun again? Complaining with Dali Song's Ministry of Rites and Honglu Temple, the other two yamen didn't even bother to pay attention and never replied. Even if the emperor of a certain country wrote in his own hand and complained with Guanhu Academy, the deputy head of the academy, who is now in charge of the general affairs of the mountain, can at most answer the word rediscussion, or, this matter is to be determined. A few years ago, why did several countries in the south want to overthrow the stone tablet on the top of the mountain in their own country, despite being missed and resented by the Dali court in the north? There are both monarchs who are reviving their country blindly, and emperors who are purely motivated by interests, wanting to restore the golden bodies of certain gods and gods, helping to gather and stabilize a country's landscape and luck. In the flower hall, Hu Junzhang Xiangdao suddenly asked, Is there any answer among us? As soon as these words came out, those guests who had planned to go down the mountain to leave with a cheeky face were suddenly dumbfounded, and they hated in their hearts and hated the talkativeness of the Baihua Lake Shuijun. Lu Chen smiled and joked, For these ghosts, landscapes and gods, their current predicament is a bit like the last Zhou mountain? Qin Pingon nodded. Lucian didn't say it and didn't feel it was really similar. Suffered an innocent disaster for no reason with no warning, no escape. Lucian turned his head and asked, Brother Bai, do you think this battle can be fought? Bai Mao looked complicated and nodded. Lucian wondered, why is this? Is there any basis? Wouldn't it be a false alarm because of heavy thunder and rain? Bai Mao said bitterly, you don't know. Now in Baoping continent, especially in the area south of Dadu near the middle, the arsenals of various countries have weapons in stock of varying amounts, and the origin is unusual. Winning the Wild Monster clan dispatched thousands of monks and refiners on the mountain, and almost all of the talismans under the earth immortals. They worked day and night to create countless weapons and armors, each of which was used on the mountain. Most of the casting or talisman methods were used on the battlefields of Dadu in the southern and central parts of Izhou, but there are still some that were left to the vassal courts of various countries, and such objects on the mountain are naturally very precious. But there is a problem. They have a limit of time. After all, as long as the talisman is sacrificed, it is equivalent to opening the door. It is difficult to close the door again. So many spears, swords and halberds are piled up in the warehouse of the Ministry of War, and sooner or later there will be one day it will become an ordinary weapon. They are all secretly hidden by various vassal countries after the war. After the war, the officials of the Dali court have a heavy workload and a limited number of people. It is impossible to cover everything, and some omissions are inevitable. Especially, it is not appropriate to investigate the matter until the southern vassals are restored to the country one after another. Some imperial courts in the south will sell them at a high price to the restored imperial courts further south through various channels on the mountain, making profits from them and making a lot of money. Or it can be used directly on the battlefield, or more often through a few cross-continental ferries, and sold to Tongyi's Hao at a sky-high price. It's just that soon the academy in the southernmost part of Aquarius continent began to intervene and investigate the matter. Especially in a college in the north of Tongye continent, there was a deputy head of the mountain who seemed to be surnamed Wen. Not long after he took office, the two continents, this financial path between them is completely cut off. The former vassals like Shushui Kingdom and Tsai Kingdom, which were closest to Dadu, were too close to Luojing to accompany the capital, so they started this kind of money-making activities. I don't dare to be open-minded. Qingxing Kingdom must be in a situation that is not much better, and Emperor Lu is a thin-skinned person. Presumably there is a large inventory of various talismans, armors and weapons. As a result, there are several countries around Hehuan Mountain, but they dare not sell it. Could it be possible to stay in the warehouse of the Ministry of War to eat dust? Since Zhengzhou has no place to use it, he just used us to practice martial arts. Lu Chen's face was suddenly enlightened. Bai Mao can be said to have broken the mystery in one sentence, and he deserves to be a former official. Just like the amulet that Qin Pingon got from Li Baozhen back then, after using it once in Shujian Lake, the aura of the talisman began to overflow. It was only after arriving at the Dasui Xianxia Academy and asking Mao Xiaodong for help, he was able to close the door. Otherwise, the aura of the extremely high-ranking talisman would gradually dissipate and eventually become a piece of waste paper. When the old woman heard the words, she was somewhat impressed by the crane cloak scholar, who knew at a glance that he was a ghost. This ghost's realm was low, but he had some knowledge. Zhao Fiang continued, the Qingxing Kingdom is for the sake of face, and we must fulfill the promise with the Shengao sect or the Yunlin Jiang clan. In addition, the Lu clan's emperor will not do it again and again, and simply promise to the other two emperors, allowing them to carve up the Hehuan mountain area. And the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom gave up all of them, but the three parties secretly signed a mountain alliance to search for all the proceeds from the various cave temples outside Hehuan Mountain. After Hehuan Mountain, the rest of the two countries are allowed to sit on the ground and divide the spoils, and the Lu family can leave it alone, and will never get involved in all the treasure houses of the two mountains. They are all chopping meat. Lu Chen TSK wondered. According to Zhao Fiang's calculation method, it seems that it can affect and unite people's hearts more than the one proposed by Qing Qian. Qin Pingon smiled and said, why does Zhang Jiaolu make it so difficult for his disciples and grandchildren? Lu Shenming clearly presented Zhao Fiang with two big problems in succession. First, use the branches to overwhelm the entire Hehuan mountain, forcing Zhao Fiang to be unable to break through the mountain and become the nascent soul. This has already caused Zhao Fiang, who could have made a lot of money and let Qingqian lose to the sky, to fall short. This is already a dead end. That's not all. Lu Chen called Xiangjuan of Lingfei Gong again and asked her to sit here, making Zhao Fiang tied his hands and feet, and it is not appropriate to resort to some resolute underhand tactics. Lu Chen's face was embarrassed. It can't be called, it can't be counted. When Xin couldn't hear Lu Chen's words naturally, the master Wen just put his legs on the wine table and said with a lazy smile, "It's really hard work, Zhao Jindan." Patriarch Xiangjian's expression suddenly changed slightly, and when she looked at Bai Mao again, it was completely different. Zhao Fiang said indifferently, "There is no way in the sky and there is no way to break the game. It depends on whether you are interested in listening to it." When Pei Qian heard this as an outsider, she was a little curious. Qin Pingon said, "It's not hard to guess." Secretly sent a letter to the other two countries, slowed down, and let the Qingxing Kingdom's imperial troops and horses reach the Hehuan Mountain boundary earlier. Zhao Fiang sat in Hehuan Mountain, and drove the people on the mountain to cooperate with Cheng Qian and the Zhang clan of Tianchao County have a complete shopping spree. Of course, the premise is to leave Qingqian first and have no agreement with the emperor of the Lu clan. At the same time, Zhao Fiang secretly promised that the two countries would give up everything. In the end, there is only a lonely Hehuan Mountain left. I am willing to continue to involve and restrain the Lu clan of Qingxing Kingdom, Chwikingfeng of Jinkei School, and Zhang clan of Tianchao County. After this battle, the guests of Hehuan Mountain tonight can be all were handed over to the court of the two countries. After Zhao Fiang was able to breathe, he would find an opportunity to cut off his tail to survive, forcibly stop Panshan together, and take Yu Chuanji and the others to carry the mountain to escape. Only to it is necessary to find the border cave mansion where the formation is arranged and hide in the Qingxing Kingdom capital. Zhao Fiang will not be in a hurry to take revenge. Most likely he will abscond all the way to Tongye continent. Wait patiently for one day to enter the nascent soul realm and come again. Going to visit the old place again, looking for trouble with Qing Qian of Qingqingfeng and Zhang Shi of Tianchao County. The top of Splashing Ink Peak. Tianjun Chao Rong used the Sanshan talisman for the first time. After coming here, in addition to the master, there was an unexpected character. Chao Rong paid his respects first. Chao Rong pays respects to master. Lu Chen nodded. Qin Pingon clasped his fists and smiled. I have seen Chao Tunjun. In the old Longqing battlefield, the reclusive Taoist priest of the Baishuang dynasty shined brilliantly and made outstanding achievements. In particular, Chao Rong's supernatural means of pressing the bottom of the box with one hand protected the entire old Longqing mansion. Chao Rong once sacrificed a book of landscape flowers and birds, in which 4 landscape paintings were stamped with the private seals of the 3 teachers of Bai Yujing, who were the Tao Jingshi with the name of the big head teacher Ko, who are truly invincible Yudo. The text has the first, the martial arts is the second, Master Lu Shen's stone to the present. The key is also a seal of Sun Huaizhong Zuanduguan, who is recognized to be the worst with Bai Yujing. The peach blossoms are blooming again. In addition, the 4 flower and bird albums were obtained by Chao Rong relying on his own passion for incense on the mountain. Fu Lu Yu Xian, a blockbuster. Zhao Tianlai in Longhu Mountain, the French seal is Young Phoenix. In addition, there is a real fire dragon, embroidered tiger Tuiyu. 1 person engraved, chirping and screaming non-stop. 1 person monograms white eyes. At that time Chao Rong tore off the first 4 pages, as if he had added 4 vestments to the old dragon city where the mansion of Dali was located, and the 4 layers of heaven and earth were prohibited. Chao Rong bowed his head and said with a smile, "I'm fortunate enough to meet Master Chen Shan. As a genuinely enlightened person, he has an unparalleled bearing in the world. At the end of the war in Aquarius Island, I traveled to Fuyin, and then traveled to the mountains and rivers of several continents. Chao Rong just returned from Luxiazu. There is a secret place of the ancient mansion that was present at the same time as the autumn temple of Aquarius Island and the night boat at sea. There is a dragon vein formed by the mountains like a river flowing in the air. Tianyu Cave, Tianshu Cave Lord, joined hands with Taoist companions to search for treasures. After all, it is a mysterious place known as the Undead Homeland. Even immortals must be a little jealous, and then Chao Rong met them and the 2 sides started to fight. A little dispute, the result is to withdraw from the secret realm. Lu Chen's face was full of resentment. It seemed that his apprentices were bigger than him. Lu Chen said, Chao Rong, you sent a secret message to Xianxia, saying that I have already left the Hehuan mountain boundary, and let her do whatever she wants. Chao Rong bowed his head again. Follow the decree of the law. After all, in addition to being a master, Lu Chen is also one of the head teachers of Bai Yujing. The white hare is looking for trouble and it is born in this hare. Lu Chen patted his disciple's shoulder and sighed, Chao Rong, you are getting old too. Chao Rong lowered his head and said, this disciple is blunt and has worked hard for 3,000 years to find the way, but he has never been able to achieve the law of Xiaoji's ascension. He is ashamed of the teacher's teaching. Lu Chen comforted, it's okay anyway, you and my master and apprentice are all virtuous, and we all rely on our master's face to go around the world. No matter how tough Chao Rongdao's heart is, there are outsiders present, so he blushed when he heard this. Since the Tao has its appearance, the sky has its shape. Naturally, to imitate the landscape you must first capture the landscape outside the painting. Lu Chen wrapped his arms around his sleeves and looked up at Hehuan Mountain. The old weather has changed the world. The mountains and rivers have changed the old weather. Slightly deflecting his gaze, Lu Chen was silent for a moment and said, Qin Pingon, remember to say hello to Pei Qian, she can see everything, remember people and events and don't overdo it. After all, it's not what she thinks she has forgotten, it's true. Forget it, after all, the mind is different. If the 5 elements are compared with the viscera, the lungs store the soul, the liver stores the soul, and the heart stores the spirit. And Pei Qian seems to forget what he wants to forget and remember what he wants to remember. This seems to be a knack that she has mastered since she was a child, an unreasonable talent. Qin Pingon nodded and said, I have already told her about it. Lu Chen turned his head to look at Qin Pingon. After a while, Lu Chen didn't say anything and looked up at the sky again. I don't know who gave it to someone, a bamboo slip with landscape and repetition. Sword of Coming Chapter 1023. In a rural school there is a teacher named Qin Ji, who is instructing his disciples on a certain pile frame. When Zhou Xian rested, he was in a complicated mood because during the day master was almost scratched by a shrew who broke into the school. There is no curfew in the capital of Yushuan. Wu Di, a Taoist priest who sets up a stall for fortune-telling, had a late-night snack in the kitchen and walked out of the house in the dark. During this period he passed by the Yashan of Chongning County. The Yashan temple was brightly lit. Dispute. The Taoist priest went north and walked in a shabby alley in Yongjia County, intending to find a young man and chat a few words. On the other side of Tsayu Mountain, the old-fashioned acquaintance of the Zhuji school, who came to the riverside to make a nest and prepare for night fishing. This is the case with the masters who only need 1 pole, 1 bench and 1 fish basket, and absolutely do not set up a street stall. In the Fanwan mansion in the Hehuan Mountains, the young man with straw sandals carrying a sword and the pseudonym Chen Ren, with an empty scabbard, was hesitant to let his disciples play against the unrighteous-looking master when to practice his skills. On the top of Pomo Peak, Qin Pingon, dressed in Immortal style and Taoist attire, was non-committal when he heard the words. He smiled and said goodbye to Chao Rong. Be sure to sweep the bed and wait. Chao Rong also didn't say that he would definitely be a guest at Luopao Mountain, but just smiled and said, blessed and immeasurable Tianzuan. Qin Pingan's figure turned into a rainbow and it was fleeting. He left the top of splashing Mo Peak and left Hehuan Mountain in a few blinks of an eye. Lu Chen squatted on the ground again, picked up 9 small stones and held them in his palms, shook them gently like throwing dice and threw them on the ground. Although Chao Rong claimed to be dull in his aptitude and had been practicing Taoism for 3,000 years, he had never been able to find a way for Xiaoju to ascend. Just talking about the talisman formation method, Chao Rong has a great insight. Hearing is false, seeing is believing. This famous young hidden official has already entered the hall with Fu Lu, and his attainments are definitely not low. As for how high it is, Chao Rong is not interested in exploring. He and Qin Pingon are neither relatives nor related, and there is no grievance or enmity. Chao Rong, thank you for holding back and not calculating Qin Pingan's numerology without authorization. Otherwise you will be a brother or a brother with Lu Shen. Lu Chen made a joke first and then explained. The Big Dipper plus the 2 assistant chiefs, Qin Pingon created 9 avatars with the talisman technique. Just now this Qin Pingon as one of the left assistant and the right by, can't stay here for too long. Otherwise the whole body will be moved with 1 hair and the whole formation will be messed up. Chao Rong asked curiously. Master and Qin Pingan have a good relationship. As for Qin Pingan's method of forming a talisman clone, it is not enough to make a Taoist heavenly monarch make a fuss. It's pitiful to say Master Lu Qin visited Howren World several times, but he never took the initiative to find Chao Rong, the direct disciple of Ling Fei Guan. Regarding the rumors about the master and the young hidden official, Chao Rong has naturally heard a lot of gossip on the top of the mountain in Yizhou over the years, not to mention that he traveled to Beiju Luzhou before, met his junior sister Xiaoyang and heard some insider. Lu Qin had a sad face, nodded and said, "It's good, it's entangled and it's a mess." Putting his hands together and breathing lightly, Lu Qin looked up at Hahuan Mountain again and asked, "How is he Xiaoyang?" Some things Lu Qin is too lazy to deduce the calculation. He is a Taoist priest, and he is not an old hen who spreads his wings to protect a group of chickens. Chao Rong replied respectfully, reporting to Master Bai Chong secretly retreated not long ago, and junior sister he knew that it might be a trap to target her, but she still insisted on blocking her, so the disciple and senior brother Gu had to gamble with her. There is also Tianjun Xiesher in the dark to help fight the battle, but because of his identity, it is not suitable for him to take action against Bai Chong. He can only fight from a distance to prevent Bai Chong from killing junior sister he. Gu Qingsong, whose name is Xianxia, was not a serious disciple of Lu Qin, but was just a boat-punting boatman who followed Lu Qin to visit Xian. It's just that these heirs of Chao Rong all recognize this big brother who has never lost a quarrel and won't be discouraged by anyone who sees him. Tianjun Xiesher is the nominal bearer on Luzhou Mountain in Beiju. Except for the Confucian Academy, he can control the heavens and the earth. This Taoist Tianjun, whose ancestral home is in Tiantui Lane in Lizhu Cave, is similar to that of Qi Zhen, the of the gods, who was in Aquarius in the early years. As for Datafeng Fire Dragon Master, he will never admit his identity as a black and white person, always saying that the poor road has little money in his pocket, so he can't speak harshly. Thinking of the encounter with the mantis catching the cicada and the oriole behind, Chao Rong inevitably felt a little lingering in his heart, so he quietly clenched his fists, diluting the image of the sword Xiao Baishang in his heart. Baishang's retreat is true. It is absolutely true. It is the speed of breaking through the border and exiting the border is staggeringly fast, which is unheard of. And it doesn't look like a brand new ascension that needs a stable realm. The previous disciples believed that they had overestimated Jianxian Baishang enough, but they still underestimated. Being caught by surprise, senior brother Gu blocked the first sword with the temporary formation, and he was not lightly injured. Now he is recovering on Osmanthus Island. The disciple blocked the second sword, and junior sister he barely caught the first sword. 3 swords were only smashed into the air by one sword, and his body smashed into a mountain. Fortunately, he was not seriously injured. Before Xiesher could help, a Taoist priest who claimed to be Chunyang came. Chao Rong's words couldn't be more succinct. Others seemed to be very calm, but I believe that all the authorities involved, including Xiesher who did not take action, would not feel any relief. Well, maybe except for that senior brother Gu who is used to seeing big scenes. It's just that Chao Rong has to admit that he Xiaoyang, a junior sister, is really not ordinary. It wasn't that they joined forces to face an Ascension Realm sword cultivator, and they had no chance of winning, but Chao Rong's trip was more of a Daoist protection, and the teacher was unknown, so he had no reason to be ruthless against Bai Chong. They had clearly fallen into the trap carefully arranged by Bai Chong, but junior sister he was only able to escape with a single blow, which was an unimaginable encounter on the mountain for Chao Rong. Lu Qin obviously expected this ending. He smiled and said, "Do you think the name of the number 1 sword immortal in Beiju Luzhou Beidi is a sleight of hand? There is no reason for this. Bai Chong is very patient in order to prove the Taoan sword. He has far-reaching plans openly and secretly. He has at least paved 3 paths for himself, trying to become one, which is very hard. For example, Bai Chong didn't hesitate to cooperate with Xingyang Dogwood Feng Tianwan to covet the luck of Aquarius Island's kendo. It almost succeeded. Ambition is lofty, it's just the way of doing things. It's a bit suspicious of unscrupulousness, and it's more like a pure Shanzi Yeshio. He Xiaoyang doesn't compare his luck with Bai Chong. What is it like to use one's weaknesses to attack another's strengths? Then Beiju Luzhou is a well-known sword cultivator like the clouds. Logically speaking, there is always a sword cultivator in the Ascension realm. Gu Qingsong can't speak his mind and he can do anything easily, so don't talk about him. You Chao Rong don't think it's strange? Take 10,000 steps back and say that Xianxia, as an elder on the mountain and a snake in the field, doesn't persuade us to sect master he? When Lu Chen said this, he smiled. He Xiaoyang wants to delay Bai Chang's step into the Ascension Realm Sword Cultivator. It is best to hurt his fundamentals so that he will not be able to enter the Ascension Realm in this life. Otherwise both parties will be Ascension. There is no way to fight at least for 1800 years in the same continent, the two mortal enemies of the Great Tao but only staring. It is embarrassing. Bai Chang wants to let He Xiaoyang go through this battle, drop a level or two, lose the next big opportunity step by step and plan to let He Xiaoyang spend his life. It's hard to look back. Anyway, mutual, they are both afraid of each other, and they are all betting on what to do once and for all. One is betting that Beisheng's cultivating qualifications are not so good, and it is impossible to go out of retreat. She always has bad luck. Chao Rong asked. The Taoist Chunyang said that he is an old acquaintance with Master, and he still owes Master a favor. Lu Chen said, it's not a debt of gratitude. Fellow Daoist Chunyang and Baigu Zhenren once traveled together in Qingcui City, and he and your master are still very close. The Taoist who attains immortal longevity is not allowed to walk as a corpse. As one of Lu Chen's 7 hearts, the bone real man is undoubtedly the opposite. Taoist sidewalk Taoist. Long-term vision of the long-lived person. The Taoist age is long enough, and if you live for a long time, you can see a lot of later people step by step to the top of the mountain. Lu Chen smiled and asked, have the two of them fought so much that the sky is torn apart and the earth is shaking? Chao Rong shook his head and said, Bai Chang and the Taoist Chunyang are in a sight the size of a stone flat on the top of the mountain, and compare their swordsmanship. In the end, it is no exaggeration to say that the top of a mountain is thick like water and then freezes. Chao Rong said with emotion, a Taoist priest is a sword immortal, purely using swordsmanship against swordsmanship. I never thought that a Taoist priest would win. Lu Chen was even more surprised by this. It would be a strange thing if Bai Chang, who had just entered the Ascension Realm, won against Lu Yen, who had attained enlightenment 3,000 years ago. Chunyang Lu Yen can't say that he will definitely be among the top 10 in the world in the future, and Lu Chen doesn't dare to promise anything. But taking a step back, Lu Yen became one of the candidates, so there was no suspense. Lu Chen smiled and said, the founder of Jingxian Temple, what happened in those days? What a mistake she made to be removed from your name and become an abandoned disciple of Lingfei Temple. Why does she want to restore her status as a genealogy ultimatum? Chao Rong told the truth honestly. She was too anxious to enter the 5 realms. She took a crooked way, secretly retreated, and as a result her Taoist heart fell and she went into the devil. The disciples noticed the signs and had to force her out illusory realm. If you take one step later, she will be taken advantage of by the demons and occupy the magpie's nest. The crime should be death, and her expulsion down the mountain has been regarded as a side effect. Lu Chen said regretfully, I remember when you entered the fairyland, I once walked out of the Patriarch's hall to hang the statue. Later, when I was walking in the mountains, I saw her. In the vast world such as Lingfei Temple and Taiping Mountain, Taoist priests can invite the patriarch of one of the 3 headmasters of Baiyujing when they are among the heavenly monarchs. There is a stick of incense. At that time she was still an ignorant girl with a pointed chin and round eyes. When the girl saw the crown on top of Lu Chen's head, she insisted on investigating him for trespassing. Be smart and guess who and why. If you are a little stupid, I am afraid that I will not let it go, and find an opportunity to inform the elders of the division. In the complicated world, the innocence of man is like an unsheathed sword, which can only be hung on a wall called childhood or youth. Maybe when I return to my hometown occasionally I can look at it a few times, but I can't carry it with me all the time. Lu Chen smiled. Chao Tianjun, you're not honest. Chao Rong looked embarrassed and guessed why the master was making fun of him, so he had to bite the bullet and say, Junior sister, he is worried about being punished by the master, so she asked the disciple to help conceal it. It turned out that before He Xiaoyang set off, she had already made up her mind to give up a cave, plus her fall as a price. She would also stop Bai Chang from breaking through. It was only because Bai Chang went out of the border too quickly that He Xiaoyang's loss-making business, which could be said to be willing to kill 800 and lose 1,000, failed. Lu Chen didn't bother to care about this kind of thing and said, go back and say hello to Xiangjuan, and restore this person's genealogy status at Ling Figuan. Chao Rong bowed his head and said, follow the law. After Qin Pingan left Momo Peak, he went straight back to the place where there is a historic site. The Immortal family can follow the traces of the ancients. Following the written records of a local county annals, Qin Pingon really found a deep mountain that the local people regarded as the residence of immortals since ancient times. It is just a temple in the mountain which has long been abandoned, and the incense that is like a city in history is no longer seen. However, Qin Pingon found a few frost pines on the mountain and see supplementary records beside an old road. Qin Pingon looked at the ancient pine trees and considered two problems. The realm was not enough and he couldn't use the supernatural powers of the upper 5 realms. Not to mention the square-inch objects, even the objects just a short distance away couldn't hold these ancient trees. To say that carrying a pine tree on his shoulders and flying into the sea of clouds would be a bit outrageous after all. Fallen Mountain. Qin Pingon walked out of the first floor of the bamboo building, rubbed his wrist lightly and looked into the distance in the dark night. The stars fell and the plains were wide, and the sky and the earth merged as if only by galloping on a horse he could reach the end of the sky. Because of the encounter with Lu Qin on the Hehuan Mountain, a series of related books were found here, such as the 7 political chapters of 5 Elements of Great Justice, Tian Sun, Lu Liji, Rijiu Ling, etc., as well as books from Tong Yi the Higuanzi, and the astronomical array of stars borrowed by Zhou Xian have actually been read several times, and they have already been thoroughly familiar with the heart, just reviewing the old and learning the new. Walking along the bluestone path, walking near the old cook's house, I heard Qin Lingjun and Jing Daifeng's signature laughter from a distance. Qin Pingon used his knees to think about what they were doing. After hesitating for a while, Qin Pingon still crossed the threshold and came to the side room. The doors were not closed at both places. He stood leaning against the door, his hands clasped in his sleeves, and saw the spiritual tools used to watch the mirror and the moon on the table in the house, piled up into mountains. At the moment, it is a landscape painting of a small fairy mansion in Beipingzu. There is a graceful fairy walking slowly. Zheng Dafeng touched his mouth, commented and played the piano. Qin Lingjun saw the woman sitting beside the dressing table and started to pull her hair. The boy in Tsingyi laughed and said that when she saw her hair tied, I knew it wasn't easy. Xianwei was actually here. Brother Dafeng and fellow Daoist Jingqing had heard a lot of words before, but now the gatekeeper understands it as soon as he heard it. Therefore Qin Lingjun always praised him for his understanding. Only the old cook was alone, sitting elsewhere, watching a picture of a scholar taking the exam at night in a haunted house. He was holding a vegetable plate and a plate of fried soybeans. The old cook threw a few fried soybeans in his mouth and was seeing outside the boudoir attic. There are 2 white and red clothes circling in the air, but they don't fall to the ground. The old cook got up and wanted to give up his seat, but Qin Pingon didn't disturb their yaxing, waved his hand and left. Going to the mountain road, Sun Yuanji was still practicing boxing, and now she looked at the young mountain master's eyes and finally she was not so thief-proof. In the early years Qin Pingon got angry when he thought of this. The old cook's room is so ugly, the old and the young, there is no serious person. You don't take precautions, but why do you want to prevent me, a decent gentleman? Walking on the steps I remembered the authentic Book of Pills, presented by Li Shixing. It is a thin booklet that records more than 80 kinds of talismans. Back then, when Zhang Lu temporarily borrowed the 14-realm Dao Xing to Qin Pingon, the young hidden officer was not idle, making the best use of everything, while traveling through the mountains and rivers of Treasure Pingzhou, taking advantage of the fact that the realm was so high that it couldn't be higher. I was able to condescend, and drew the top-grade talismans located on the pages behind the original Book of Alchemy. The number was extremely considerable, but after that, even when I asked the sword to hold Yueshan, it was never used and more than 300 talismans were used. Qin Pingon was all locked in a small wooden box that was sealed off the mountain, a veritable bottom of the box. Qin Pingon came to the gate of the mountain and sat at the table. Realm can be borrowed, but to draw talismans in person, you still need to consume your own spiritual energy savings. The loss of spiritual energy is the capital of the 300 talismans. After making an estimation according to the market price on the mountain, the cultivator's aura was converted into immortal money. If Qin Pingon chose to sell that box of talismans, he would earn a lot. Just because of the high rank of these talismans, the rank of the Forbidden Mountain went up with the tide. At that time, Qin Pingon felt that since he was already in the Jade Realm, it would not be too difficult to enter the Immortal Realm, so he dug himself a big hole and ended up leaving. After a trip to the wild world, he fell directly into nascent soul, and so far he has not been able to return to Yupu, and he knows his hardships. When a Qi practitioner draws and sacrifices a talisman, it is important to open and close the door. As for Wufu's talismans, the spiritual energy overflows so fast, like a flood bursting a dike out of control. In the end, it still doesn't work. But if you really get the door, I believe there will be a unique scene. Living in the mountains, living with the monastery, the diet is light with more vegetables and less fat. The tofu that the temple grinds itself is slightly sour, and the vegetarian rice has been lacking for several months, and the taste of meat has not been known for a long time. Cooking fresh food even though he is a guest, unfortunately this is also a violation of the precepts, and he is inevitably jealous of the mountain monks, so he has to give up. There are no mirrors in the mountains and it is difficult to see myself. Only when I copy and write scriptures every day I can see that my fingers are gradually exposed. The paper in the temple is poor, and the pen falls on the paper like an old donkey carrying a load of climbing a mountain. The scholar took a break, shook his wrists and rubbed his temples with his fingers, thinking that it was the same color as the white clouds. At night, Confucian scholars read Buddhist scriptures with lanterns at night, and the bells in the temple chat with each other. The stars are not far from the roof. Early in the morning when I heard the bell, the scholar put on his clothes and shoes, opened the door and opened the window, and the white cloud rushed in through the curtain, unstoppable. The thick cloud was like a quilt. A person is like sitting in chaos, extending his hand and not seeing his 5 fingers, and inside his mouth and nose, there is nothing but cloud gas, which is like drinking and getting drunk. The clouds and mist were slightly lighter, and the little novice monks who had not yet been ordained in the temple brought their food boxes on time. In the sound of the monks chanting, the Confucian scholar with frost and white on his temples was alone in the cloud. A large bowl of white rice porridge, 2 porridge side dishes, and a plate fermented bean curd, a plate of salted and dried vegetables. The scholar raised his head occasionally, a colorful butterfly riding a cloud to play under the eaves outside the house. Bound by an old spider web, his wings could not flutter. The scholar put the bowl and stood up, holding an old bamboo inside the house, rooting the mountain stick to pick the net to save the butterfly. The scholar returned to the table and sat down, chewing slowly. When he saw the old cobweb, he had one more question in his mind, and he should ask the abbot and monk. Precepts and laws. The law is strict and there are occasional other words. Today, a distinguished guest climbed the mountain and entered the temple gate, accompanied by a dozen servants, the head of whom is half 100 years old, speaking elegantly and playing an official accent, graceful and slow, extremely majestic, and the abbot and monk are not seen to greet him. In the living room there are often bursts of laughter. The distinguished guests and the acquaintance monks travel together, stop moving, put their hands behind their backs and stare at the scriptures of the ordination altar. At the beginning of the rain, after the rain, it is easy to be sleepy in the spring. The Confucian scholar just took a nap and just had his first foot, and the familiar little novice knocked on the window and shouted, "Mr. Chen, Mr. Chen." Shanling Xianjun drove the colorful clouds to Zhou Xian Manjusri stage. Enough to see. The Confucian scholar left the temple, climbed the mountain with the little novice, and used the bamboo stick to clear the dead wood and pine branches on the mountain road. There are always elegant scholars, digging up old bamboo roots, making a mountain stick. In particular, some old vines in the mountains are used for making sticks. They are the favorites of many senior officials and they are expensive. There are several peaks in this mountain which are often in the clouds and mist, and it is not easy to show their faces to lay people outside the mountain. Looking up at the peaks, the clouds and smoke curled up, like a face-to-face questioning, like a face-to-face life. The temple at the foot of the mountain has a famous name in the history of Aquarius Island, and the incense is still deserted. There are several temples on the mountain, all of which are small and nameless, and the incense is sparse as one can imagine. There is only one temple on this peak near the top of the mountain, with an isolated cloud table and a simple meditation room. Confucian scholars and little novices have come here several times. There are no mountain monks to welcome guests, only the barking of mountain dogs. The mountains here are high and the wind is cool. Even when entering ambush, it is said that monks still need to wear cotton-padded clothes, and there is no need for cooling fans in all seasons. Visitors from outside the mountains occasionally come here to escape the summer heat, all saying that the world is in the sweltering heat. There is a small pool in the courtyard 2 feet deep. Confucian scholars have carefully examined its stone and soil structure, and it seems that no dripping water flows out of the mountains and flows to the world. There is Zhou Xian cliff next to the ancient temple and a pavilion is built. Every time the Confucian scholar came here to watch the sea of clouds, he would put on a strange posture, making a fist with his left hand at his waist. Then the little novice will hear a series of extremely strange sounds, and he will listen with his ears open. It seems to be a Buddhist mantra. The little novice can only hear the first and last words. Finally there was a sudden bang like thunder. The little novice asked curiously what it was, but the scholar also smiled without saying a word, only saying that he would know in the future. On the way up the mountain the little novice has good foot strength. After walking several miles he still breathes smoothly and asked casually, "Mr. Chen, what is Xiao Ping Xing?" The monks who patrol the mountains in the temple all say that there is a mountain monarch commonly known as a big worm in the mountain. The Confucian smiled and said, "Take the rice when you wash the rice, eat when you eat, recite the scriptures when you recite the scriptures, ring the bell when you ring the bell and sleep when you sleep." Mr. Chen, these principles have long been in the books and the abbot also told us. Then take my own example. When talking to you, chatting with Bai Yi, Zhou Xian and other seniors, it is similar to the state of mind. This is called a normal mind, but it is difficult. I have been pondering this over the years. Question. Who are they, big men? They are great people and they are all heroes and sages worthy of respect. The little novice touched his bald head. Understood, no matter if Mr. Chen is rich or not, I have the same respect. The scholar smiled knowingly and said, "Very good, this is called having a root of wisdom." The little novice said shyly, "If this is Hugin, then Hugin is too worthless." The scribe smiled and said, "The wisdom of people is like the breath of heaven and earth that you and I breathe. Whether it's worth it depends on how you look at it." The little novice hesitated for a moment and said, "Mr. Chen, I want to ask you something." Mr. Chen is very arrogant, copying scriptures and writing in small script, and the monks in the monastery begged him for copybook fans or couplets, all of which were declined. The Confucian seemed to have guessed the little novice's mind, shook his head and smiled. "Let's not talk about this matter." The little novice sighed. They didn't go to the small temple this time, but went straight to Xianxia mountain pavilion to enjoy the view. After watching the clouds for a while, the Confucian scholar put his left fist on his waist again. As for the mantra he recited, it was the mantra of Samantabhadra Vajrasattva, following the ritual visualized from the front like a sea of offerings in the clouds, on the white lotus moon wheel Dharma seat. A stranger came from outside the pavilion, and the little novice hurriedly bowed his head and saluted. Looking at the clear-faced scholar with frosty white temples, he was as thin as a wild crane. Yuan Huajing wondered, "Is it you?" The scholar in the Confucian shirt also wondered, "Who are you?" Yuan Huajing sneered, "It really is you." Appearance and mood can be changed, but just such a pair of tricks really makes Yuan Huajing annoyed. It is no wonder that on a secret espionage report of the Delhi Punishment Department, it is reasonable to say that the wording is extremely serious and exquisite, but there are many fair speeches that are just copied to the intelligence. Some of the comments came from the local swordsman of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Yuan Huajing was dumbfounded when he saw them and changed them to be more charming, and he would spray rice every time he mentioned it at the dinner table and wine bureau. From a distance he looks like a liang, but from a closer look he looks like a hidden official. Dogs are real dogs, one more than one dog. Yuan Huajing couldn't understand this. It is said that the Great Wall of Sword Qi had a good impression of these two foreign swordsmen and scholars, but the result was such a bad-wind comment. So unscrupulous and spared no effort, still shocking those who have never been to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Just like the national teacher Cui Yu Fengxue Temple Sword Immortal Wei Jin in Aquarius, how could anyone be so casually ridiculed? Seeing that he recognized him, Qin Pingon laughed heartily and said, "After several discussions in the capital, you don't seem to have sacrificed the flying sword of life at the bottom of the box? It's because you can't win anyway, so just hide it or it's inappropriate. In this world, can't see the light for the time being?" Yuan Huajing was silent. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "It's okay, no one has a shadow under the sun." Yuan Huajing still didn't speak. He hesitated for a while, then climbed the steps and walked into the pavilion. The little novice thought for a while, then said goodbye to a pair of friends who seemed to have met old friends in a foreign land, and went to see the scenery elsewhere. Qin Pingon picked up the robe and jacket with both hands, sat down with his legs raised, patted his knees and said with a smile, "Is this a summer retreat for Yuan Jianxian? Although this mountain is beautiful in shape, it does not have spirits and only prostitutes, and there is no record of emperors enshrining Zen in history." Qin Pingon said, "It's really a good place to live and relax. Can be seen that Yuan Jianxian is really peaceful and happy and has an indifferent interest." Yuan Huajing said, "You don't need to say these insincere polite words." Qin Pingon sighed and complained, "What's the politeness? Yuan Jianxian and I are the most compatible and there is no taboo between friends, but it's just irony." Yuan Huajing choked for a while. Indeed, among the 9 people from the terrestrial branch in the capital of Dali, he was the least likely to get along with Qin Pingon. Yuan Huajing cleaned up his emotions and said calmly, "I passed by Yufeng by chance in the early years and I like the cleanliness of this place. Every year in my spare time I will come here to live for a while. There are 9 of us and our identities are not visible. There is a place that is similar to relaxing, incognito, changing face, changing to a different identity when nothing happens, such as Gai Yan and opening the Xinjia Inn in the capital." Lu Hui was a county magistrate in a Ji county and Han Zhoujin was there. A Qixian opened a shop, he was his own boss and he did some business of selling tea on the border, and there were people who led the secretary to test orthography. Qin Pingon nodded. There is a degree of relaxation, and a person who cultivates the Tao can't always have a heartstring. Yuan Huajing asked, "What are you doing here?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Subduing the heart ape." Although Yuan Huajing is far from being a friend, even if he is not a friend he can still chat. When Qin Pingon went down the mountain and returned to the temple at the foot of the mountain, it was already dark night. He studied ink in his residence, spread out the paper and wrote a sentence. "Stay away from all upside-down dreams. The top of splashing ink peak." Luchin smiled and said, "If you don't deliberately say something mysterious, then what you see is true and what you hear is false. Generally speaking, it is always right." Shaking his wrists, Luchin said, "Human feelings are overturned like palms and life and death are like wheels." Between the words, Luchin flicked his fingers and there was a breeze, which touched the eyebrows of a Taoist heavenly monarch. After that, Chao Rong was like opening his eyes, following the vision of his master Luchin in the past, and clearly saw an old picture scroll of a long river of time. The scenery is old. Chao Rong couldn't help but watch the scenery. It's no use closing your eyes anyway. Only talking about what you see in your dreams, is it by your eyes? Chao Rong sat cross-legged with his palms facing upwards, stacked on his abdomen as if he were watching Taoism. The young Taoist stooped down and pushed a 2-wheeled wooden cart. There was a sound of rolling wheels on the pitted dirt road, and he entered a dimly lit alley. The Taoist priests recited all the way, "Buddha bless, Bodhisattva manifested." Stopping outside the gate of a courtyard, the Taoist priest knocked on the door and shouted. After a while, a dark and thin boy with straw sandals finally opened the door. After that there was some small talk. The teenager said that he has a good memory. According to Qin Pingan's subsequent explanation, it is easier for him to remember things when he sees them than when he listens to others. At this time Luchin seemed to be annotating and expounding an ancient text and commented with a smile, "Be careful here, Moore. This word is used very cleverly by young people." As for how good the memory is, the Taoist asked the young man to make an analogy. The young man said that in his hometown, the firing of porcelain has a process of drawing blanks and a craft called jump knife. The threshold for this craft is not low. There are many dragon kilns in the town and Master Yao is the best. But at the beginning of his apprenticeship as a kiln worker he only read it once and remembered all the details. When Chao Rong saw this, Luchin heard, and continued to say, "Just like Baiyujing's various pedigrees, Lei Fa has a lot of inheritance, and almost all of the 5 cities and 12 floors are involved. But it is recognized that Lei Fa has the highest attainments." Pang Ding, who was in the midst of the war, shook his hand at the unique skill of pressing the bottom of the box, and then there was a Taoist boy who had not yet given the pot. After a few glances from a distance, he said that he had seen it clearly and mastered all the shapes. "Chao Rong, what do you think? What is the cultivator's aptitude for this Taoist boy?" Chao Rong said with sincere admiration, "Excellent, shockingly good, enough to be called outstanding." The city owner of Lingbao City, Pang Ding with the Taoist name Humble Heart, the old Taoist priest is known as the first person in the world of thunder. Luchin said, This kind of craftsmanship can be roughly understood as a kind of cutting. It is one of Qin Ping's self-created swordsmanship. But at that time it was called being powerless. As Qin Pingon himself said, if you see every detail of Master Yao too clearly, you can see every mistake of yourself. The more mistakes you make, the more anxious you are, the more anxious you are. More mistakes. In the same village there are two poor people with no money. One is a poor man who does not know how to write big characters, and the other is a sour scholar who has read a few books. In opinion, knowing a lot of whys, but not being able to solve the problem, may just be the source of the pain. This is actually the crux of many readers. What you know in your heart is one way and what you walk on is another way. Since knowledge and action are inconsistent, tracing back to the source, in fact the body and mind are not the same, the body is here and the heart is there. Therefore, the more delicate the mind is, the more painful it will be. The wrong words, the wrong things, and the feeling of regret all stretched into a line on the unattainable road beside you, making people feel unbearable to look back and dare not turn their heads to look. Lu Chen smiled and said, "Back then I pushed the car and looked for a house so that I could take over the hottest girl in the world." In fact, Qin Pingon didn't need to open the door, he just pretended not to hear it. It's just that he heard a knock on the door. I recognized Pindo's voice and confirmed his identity. It was the Daoist priest who set up a fortune-telling stall on the side of the road, and he still opened the door. At that time Qin Pingon said a but and then there was no further text. I haven't read the book, there is little ink in my stomach and there are many thoughts in my mind. Many words can't be said in my heart. It's better not to say. Chao Rong said with a smile, the most difficult thing in life is just talking. So I went on to say, but my hands and feet never kept up with my thoughts. Hearing Lu Chen's words at that time, the strawshoe boy's eyes lit up, who always gave off a feeling of twilight. What Chao Rong saw in his eyes, or the poor boy in the eyes of Master at this moment, suddenly changed his temperament. It is like a meticulous line drawing that was originally only black and white, and instantly turned into a colorful freehand painting. Speaking of this, Lu Chen smiled. Qin Pingon is like meeting a confidant. Then Lu Chen used another metaphor. It's more like a thirsty person with a dry heart who meets a Daoist person with a water scoop. In this picture scroll of time, the young man said two more sentences in succession. I don't understand, but most of them remember. In fact, just read it once and remember all the details. Lu Chen said, I used most in the front, which is a general term. When I explained Ning Yao's physical condition, he believed it, so he used all in the back. You must know that Qin Pingon is a very cautious person who likes to deny himself. Then when he says all, it must be absolutely true with absolute certainty. This is Qin Pingon's character at that time. Just because he doubted the world, he found a few life-saving straws and held on to it. Chao Rong said, this seems to be different from many people. It is precisely because of doubts that they distrust and take denial. Deny yourself, affirm others. It's like slapping yourself in the face. Lu Chen nodded and smiled. There are a few people in the world who like to slap themselves and ask for trouble when they are full. In addition, you have left out a detail. The connection between Qin Pingon's two sentences is very interesting. There is a kind of unconscious and natural bridge which can be interpreted as a kind of equivalence, exchange. It comes from Qin Ping's intuition. Daoists in the world are almost all physicians. They will understand how important a person's awareness or somatosensory is. In the final analysis, awareness and somatosensory are the person who cultivates the Tao, his own person. Small world, a keen perception of the big world outside the body. Lu Chen sighed. On this point alone, Qin Pingon deserves the reputation of the ground material. The so-called ground material is the so-called earth immortal qualifications of the ancient times. Chao Rong nodded. Lu Chen said indifferently, it seems that we all have a tendency to destroy all good things. Chao Rong asked, in the Confucian 3-4 battle, did the master favor the literary sage? Lu Chen smiled. In the long river of time, the Taoists seemed to say something casually, maybe the master didn't have the idea of bringing Qin Pingon into the door at all. Chao Rong raised his head looking strange. Lu Chen nodded and smiled and said, naturally it was intentional with ulterior motives and murderous intent. The young man said that he was not as good as an ordinary apprentice, let alone Lu Xianyang, so it was not surprising. Chao Rong said, dilute the air. Lu Chen laughed at himself. I was quietly hinting to him that he might as well affirm himself by denying others. but he affirmed others by denying himself. I comforted him with the words steady heart, which is rare. Don't look down on yourself. Lucian smiled and said, in the end Qin Pingon probably started chatting and he talked a lot. He even gave me an analogy saying that two people were standing in deep and shallow water and they both caught fish and then asked me if the two were it's not different. I almost blurted out at that time and asked him if there are two people they can stand and bend over to catch the fish or they can go to the depths of the water and they catch the same fish whether it is the same or different. Chao Rong pondered for a moment then said doubtfully, Master, this disciple has a question. Lucian guessed his thoughts and said with a smile, I don't understand at all. Why is Qin Pingon on his friend Lu Xianying's side? Why is there not even the slightest bit of jealousy? Chao Rong nodded. Lucian rested his cheek with one hand and was silent for a moment. There is a saying in Buddhists that a bed is placed on a bed, which is of course a derogatory meaning. If you ask where to find a Buddha, you can't put your head on your head. Then what if a tall building rises from the ground and you want to reach a higher level if you want to be poor? What about killing one state of mind with one state of mind? Be careful. As a verb interpretation, be careful with your heart, and in the extreme situation, isn't it Taoist Xinzhai? Another example is the building of the Jingjing temple. The bones are piled up into mountains. There is only one person standing at the top. This person does not kill but commits suicide. He is dedicated to killing countless thieves in his heart. Chao Rong asked cautiously, why does Shizhuan care about Qin Pingon so much? Lucian wrapped his arms around his sleeves. I once had a whimsical idea, so I won't tell you about it. I'm afraid it will scare you and my Dao heart will collapse on the spot. How difficult is it to find a suitable reference? You can't find me, Lucian. Lucian can't find his two brothers or Qi Jingchun. Lucian said slowly, those who know things don't harm you and you don't get in the way. Chao Rong said solemnly, if you get it in the ring you can respond to infinity. Lucian smiled and said, this Taoist watch is not for nothing. It seems that the master put away the picture scroll of time, and what Chao Rong sees at this moment is already the scene of the world here. Lucian stood up. Chao Rong, you also cultivate talismans. What's the point of thinking that Qin Pingon took so much trouble to act at the risk of taking so much attention? Chao Rong said, the martial arts are endless and full of energy, and you need to watch the mountains and rivers all over. Lucian nodded first and then shook his head. This is one of the reasons, but it is the second one. After a moment of silence, Lucian turned his head and said with a smile, in the beginning I let you take the path of proving the path of Xiage's ascension. I deliberately tricked you, otherwise with your cultivation aptitude, there can be many paths of proving the path of ascension, but only this one, you are doomed to fail. Chao Rong was not too shocked or resentful at all. He was just puzzled. He didn't know what the master meant. Lucian said, Chao Rong, you have to start from where there is no doubt in order to truly have no doubt. Lucian stretched out his hand, made a pen with his fingers and wrote the word doubt in the air, and then wrote a series of words and idioms related to doubt. The worldly people, if they stare for a long time, stare at a certain word, close their eyes and open them again, it is easy to fail to recognize the word. Lucian sighed and said for no reason, Buddhists say that greed, anger, delusion, slowness and suspicion are the 5 poisonous minds, which create bad karma and hinder cultivation. Chao Rong nodded and said, if you don't remove the 5 minds, the so-called meditation is always evil, and the supernatural powers you cultivate are not the right way. The demons of the people who cultivate the Tao come from this. The tenets of the 3 religions are different in terms of many things, but they are actually the same. Chao Rong suddenly wanted to understand something and he couldn't hide his surprised expression and asked, Master, does Qin Pingon use Taoist techniques to form formations, and at the same time use Buddhist methods to eliminate the 5 minds? Since they each perform their own duties and practice, are you defending yourself again? Lucian nodded. This is his real intention and he hides it deeply. That's why I showed up at the Zhuji faction to cut Yushan, and he was uncharacteristically and very angry. It's not that I'm worried about what he'll do. It's just a matter of human nature. I'm afraid that others will see my privacy. If I break it, he'll become angry. Fortunately, the first person I saw Qin Pingon was the old Zhuji sect's out-of-door acquaintance, not the sword-backed boy Qinren here or someone else. Otherwise, this guy will definitely turn his face. Lucian asked, guess who is Qin Pingon in Hehuan Mountain? Chao Rong said, since the young man is seriously ill, the first fear is high anger. Could it be anger? Luchin shook his head and said, "It's wrong, it's a suspicion. Therefore the scabbard on the back is empty." In Yuzhou there is an ancient temple of Luzong. The Buddhists have a saying, "Cultivate precepts, calm wisdom and eliminate greed, hatred and delusion." Luchin smiled again and said, "A Confucian student in the Dali Temple of the law school, not only copied Buddhist scriptures, but also practiced Daomen Lei Fa. What kind of mind do you think he wants to get rid of?" Chao Rong said, "Naturally it is greed." Luchin nodded and said, "That's why I said earlier that the Tao has its appearance and the sky has its shape. To imitate a landscape you must first capture the landscape outside the painting. It is the heart-wrenching horse and the demon of the heart who are caught. The mountain owner Qin Pingon who stayed in Luobao Mountain is an idiot, so this person is responsible for collecting all the clones that he sees, thinks and wants to break through ignorance." Wu Di, a Taoist priest who set up a stall in the capital of Yushuan Kingdom, was close to the enemy's family, but he was hatred, so Qin Pingon deliberately added fuel to the fire and used this to sharpen his Taoism. Qin Shanju of Luopao Mountain, the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi who was watching a ceremony at Jinyang Mountain, how majestic, but he ended up in Chuayu Mountain not far from Jinyang Mountain, and ran to a vassal who was only Jinyang Mountain. The bamboo branch school on the top of the mountain is still an outsider, isn't it? Arrogant? Chao Rong was stunned and speechless. After being silent for a long time he couldn't help but ask, "Where is Qin Pingan's real body?" Luchin smiled and said, "In a remote rural village, being a teacher, putting away all identities and magical powers, is no different from ordinary people." Chao Rong was dumbfounded. What kind of brain is this Master Qin Shan? Besides that, Qin Pingan's actions are like practicing swords. He wants to sharpen his 2 flying swords and create 3,000 small thousand worlds. But this matter, you have heard it, don't spread it out. Qin Pingan respects you quite a bit and most likely won't cut you, but he has a good relationship with me so he won't be polite to me. Luchin smiled and asked, "Chao Rong, do you still think that Qin Ping's move is more than worth the loss?" A Big Dipper formation, 7 visible and 2 hidden, a total of 9 clones. This requires the use of 9 talismans, 2 of which are extremely rare Cyan talisman papers, which are rare items that any Confucian Academy gentleman, Taoist true monarch, and Buddhist arhats have to use with caution. And once these talisman clones are sacrificed, the spiritual energy can be replenished, but it will consume the talisman paper itself, so it is time-limited unless it is closed. Chao Rong sighed, as expected of a person who can become a hidden official as a monk from a foreign country. Luchin smiled and said, "This is so powerful?" In fact, Qin Pingan still has a layer of Taoism, which is the 6 arts handed down by the most holy master, and the sentence the gentleman is the 9 clones are not idle. If you are interested, you can guess how each of them performs their duties, and I will not reveal the secret to you. Chao Rong shook his head. Disciple doesn't bother. If you meet Qin Pingan in the future, you just need to take a detour, you can't go around, at most say a few words, the weather is good. Luchin said, "After all, it's cultivating the Tao, how can it be that simple? There may be such a poem by the master in the future, with a wedge-shaped preface." He was poor at a young age and loved to read. He practiced boxing at the age of 14 and learned swordsmanship at 15. Sword of Coming Chapter 1024, on February 2nd of this year. Located in the middle of Tongye continent, this small country called Yunyan country held a special Zhu Xian discussion. Even if you look at the whole continent and look at the history of Tongyishao Mountain, the momentum of this discussion is unprecedented and unprecedented. Yunyan Kingdom is not a vassal state of any big dynasty, and the situation of the basin may not be as big as a state in the Daquan dynasty, so it has always been called the Land of Palms. It is both a vinegar capital and a good ink producer. There are no Xianfu sects in the country, only some unpopular Jianghu forces. Just to say that there is a fish-scale ferry outside the capital that can barely be called Xianxia ferry, or because of this discussion, the Yunyan Qin court was temporarily set up. In the eyes of the Immortal Master, from the ferry port to the capital, there are various styles and appearances, but there is a sense of poverty and sourness everywhere. Like a poor housewife exhausting her purse, dressing her makeup in the mirror, smearing powder, and making a smile on her face with the distinguished guests. It has only been a month and a half and 3 meetings have been held one after another. In the darkness of the night on the fish-scale ferry, a huge ferry was docked which could be called a behemoth. The nearby fairies on the mountains kept a distance from it, intentionally or unintentionally. There is a fairy in a white robe sitting alone on the railing of the boat, drinking silently like drinking nostalgia. Chao Qingqing had just finished reading the book in the house and came to the deck to relax. When he saw the Mi de Jiangxian, he said hello softly. Chief Miyu regained his senses, turned his head with a smile and took out a jug of wine from his sleeve. It's a specialty of the capital. It seems to be called barley wine, but it's a bit bland, so I'll drink it. In fact, in the early years in his hometown, the Xianxia wine brewing that entered the Jianqi Great Wall through the inverted mountain was often extremely expensive, and the price was several times that of Haoran. At that time, Miyu was always very picky about wine. When Haoran is in the world, Miyu can drink any kind of wine, and he can also enjoy drinking water from the market and local brewing from the village. Chao Qingqing took the jug, nodded and said, "It is recorded in the book that the barley wine here is brewed with barley. The price is cheap and the wine tastes light and elegant, but it is not enough for fast drinkers." Miyu smiled and said, as expected of a proud student of Lord Yinguan, his knowledge is complicated and he understands everything. Chao Qingqing smiled and said, "It's a coincidence. I just read the content from a writer's notebook and am learning and using it now." The country of Yunyan has been a place of scholarly interest since ancient times. The scholars here, whether they are officials or wealthy families, would throw them a few books similar to the general list of certain books when they were just able to read and hyphenate words. The abstract book, in this way, although the child is still young, he has a vague concept of what is a writing and what is a good book. Read the bibliography again, keep improving and get twice the result with half the effort. Therefore, in the history of Yunyan Kingdom, famous officials and generals, immortal masters, etc. are not worth mentioning, but there have been many famous exegesis and catalog masters. Miyu asked curiously, "Is there any pressure to be a student of Lord Yinguan?" Chao Qingqing said, "I'm actually fine, maybe Pei Qian thinks more." In the capital of Yunyan Kingdom, there is not even a decent Xinjia inn, so all the Xianxia participating in the discussion live in the official residences arranged by the court, and there are even those who live in the private residences of the generals and ministers. The Ministry of Rites, the officials of He Honglu Temple were so busy just because of this matter, but they managed to cope with it without making any jokes or embarrassing things. Although he is only staying in a mansion under the name of Honglu Temple, it is just a unique place and there is a universe inside. Turns out that Lu Yuzhou is in a room. Among the many objects and many exquisite dojos that are easy to carry around, I chose one that is relatively pleasing to the eye. The snail shell is placed in the house, and when you enter the door it is Qionglu Yuyu, where birds and flowers are fragrant. When it comes to food, clothing, housing and transportation, Lu Yuzhou never treats himself badly, but he is both particular about it and able to handle it. Naturally, he is used to eating delicacies from mountains and seas, and he can also eat very happily at fly restaurants and roadside stalls. This time I arrived in the capital of Yunyan Kingdom. In less than half a month, Lu Yuzhou accompanied Lu Suiyu to eat more than a dozen large and small restaurants. In the hall of the dojo, Lu Suiyu was paralyzed, leaning on a taisha chair, stretched his legs and said with a smile, "It's a pity that I didn't see the Emperor Yao nor that Huang Yiyun." A female emperor of the Daquan dynasty, a patriarch of the Yi clan in Pushan and a martial artist of Xijing, are all very famous beauties in Tongyi's Hao. Beautiful women are always curious about the looks of other good-looking women, and only after seeing them at close range are they willing to do so, and then mutter a few words in their hearts. She looked out the door. "Lu Yuzhou, this stinky boy is really rich." She only said that there was a wisteria in the courtyard that was said to have been planted by Wei Shi in the early years. The problem is that just to support such a wisteria, this dojo where no one is permanently stationed, must have someone specializing in the maintenance of rare flowers, trees and magical birds including wisteria. This is another huge amount of magic money. In fact, Lu Yuzhou looks good and has a good character. If she didn't really have the habit of eating young grass, she would have married. In the house, in addition to Lu Suiyu, the most promising female master in the White Continent, there is also a woman who is also a martial artist in the Nine Realms, but younger than Lu Suiyu. She is Tongye Continent, who came to the island not long ago. Yuaofu, who speaks to the people of the Yu clan in Tushenzu. She was seriously injured in the wild world and her face was pale now. Lu Suiyu didn't ask the reason in detail, he only knew that Yufu was a group of people including Chao Ci, and a group of savage cubs who were also young but not low in skills fought a group fight with each other. Can only be said to be a tragic victory. Yu Aofu said, I heard that Yi Yunyun has reached the level of the end. Lu Suiyu interlaced his hands and fingers held up high, raised his chest, made a stretch, his knuckles creaked, smiled and said, She is still a fairy in the Jade Pure realm. We are all pure warriors. Compared with others, I can't be envious. Yu Aofu smiled. Indeed, if a Qi practitioner could also practice martial arts, it would be more advantageous to only talk about Xianxia. Lu Yuzhou never speaks to a woman who has something to say about the black words of the rivers and lakes. Otherwise it will be easy to end up in the wrong place, so it is better to keep silent. Lu Suiyu turned his head to look at Lu Yuzhou. Lu Gongzi, thanks to you, how many fairies have volunteered to live here, or else they will find a reason to come to the door. Let's just say that the few next door are either playing the piano or playing chess during the day. At night they are still giggling on the swings. Tell me, what are they planning? Lu Yuzhou smiled. Aunt Lu, the fairies are multi-talented in addition to cultivating Taoism, which is also the icing on the cake. Yu Aofu was about to return to his residence when Lu Suiyu suddenly said, Sister Yu, do you know that we, the eldest son of Lu, actually belong to us? Lu Yuzhou blushed and quickly waved his hands. Seeing that it didn't work, he shook his hands together and begged Aunt Lu for mercy. Yu Yufu got up and smiled. It's not me anyway. Lu Suiyu said, I still have something to do with you. Yu Yufu asked curiously, how do you say it? Could it be that this fellow Lu Yuzhou has a crush on a certain Yu family woman? Lu Yuzhou coughed a few times and secretly gestured with one hand, implying that Aunt Lu hush money easy to discuss. Lu Suiyu glanced at him. Young Master Lu was stingy and sent beggars away. Seeing that the situation was not good, Lu Yuzhou quickly changed his gestures and directly doubled the price. Only then did Lu Suiyu change his tune. Actually, it doesn't matter, it's not interesting to turn around, let's not talk about it. Yu Yufu thought about it for a while and asked in doubt, it can't be Pei Qian, right? Lu Suiyu laughed loudly, it's not what I said, the money has to be paid. Lu Yuzhou sighed and Aunt Shuelu was paralyzed against the back of the chair, posing as if a dead pig was not afraid of being scalded by boiling water, and had no love for life. Yu Yufu looked at Lu Yuzhou with pity in his eyes and held back his smile. What do you think, you like Pei Qian? With a guilty conscience, Lu Yuzhou pretended to be calm and said, I don't like it either. Yu Aifu smiled and said, you have nothing to do with me. Look at how stupid you are. You just didn't engrave the word like on your forehead. Because she and Lu Yuzhou have known each other for a long time, there is no taboo when speaking. Back then at an ancient battlefield site in Jinjiazu, Lu Yuzhou has seen her and Chao Sis many questions with his own eyes. Now whether it is the vast world or the wild world, the most powerful word in every realm of martial arts has a higher gold content, and of course more martial arts gifts are obtained. When Yu Aofu was a young girl, he once asked his ancestor and senior Zhou Xian a question that very few people cared about. There is a gate on Upside Down Mountain which connects the vast world and the Great Wall of Sword Qi, which in turn borders the wild world. Does this count as two worlds being drawn together by a single line? Just like Beiju Luzhou, there is an old Jidu with two sea entrances from east to west. At least in terms of territory, it is equivalent to dividing Beiju Luzhou in two. Isn't it still a Beiju Luzhou? Why have the two worlds for thousands of years, have always been the strongest warriors in their own way? Senior Zhou and Yu Panshui were unable to give a definite answer back then. Because he was extremely fond of Yu Yufu Zhou Xinji, the great sword immortal who was one of the 10 people in the divine continent of the Middle Earth in the past, also made a special trip to ask a good associate leader of the Confucian temple for advice on this matter, but was used by the master. I was fooled by a Confucian statement involving orthodox, and the other party was serious, but the face was full of, I'm just talking nonsense, whoever believes it is an idiot. Therefore Zhou Xinji on Yu Aifa's side just copied the wording and talked with her about some mysterious reasons for the inconsistency in reality. In the end Lao Jianxian had to add a sentence. After that it was Yu Panshui who suddenly took the initiative to find Yu Aofu, and said that he had a guess and asked a good friend on the mountain, but he could not confirm the truth. The answer is only 8 words, diverting and intercepting and forcibly collecting rent. Although the ancestor Yu Panshui did not say who the friend on the mountain was, Yu Aofu guessed that it was the embroidered tiger. After all, only Cui Yu could make the ancestor show such a complex expression, which is a very contradictory. The mentality is like a sentence engraved on the forehead. How much luck did I have to get to know Xiu? This was another hidden reason why Yu Aofu went to the Great Wall of Sword Qi in the first place. The answer of the ancestor is still too vague. After Yu Aofu arrived at the Great Wall of Sword Qi, he visited the thatched hut in private, took courage and asked the eldest sword immortal about the origin of the matter. The boss Xian didn't think she was ignorant, but he didn't give a definite answer. He just smiled and said a few words to this little girl. Before you, Xianxia also asked the same question and he got the answer by his own ability. The same test, although you are at a higher level now, you can never do what Xianxia could do in his early years. Then change it to a simpler test, just ask Quan to beat the boy named Chen. So then there were the two questions between Yu Aifu and the second shopkeeper. Then the Yen family shop had another seal with 3 characters at the bottom, and the wild goose hit the wall. Yu Aofu always felt that the guy was teasing and insinuating himself. Although in the Jinjiaza battlefield, Pei Qian swears and promises that her master is definitely not the kind of person who likes to insinuate. Lu Suiyu stood up and joked, Master Lu, Yu Aofu and Pei Qian have a very good relationship. They belong to the kind of boudoir friends who say nothing. If you can convince Yu Aofu to help you as a lobbyist, I will. Watching a play, at least there is an omen. Lu Yuzhou is thin-skinned and has a helpless look on his face. I just asked this Aunt Lu not to talk about this. It's not a matter of course. There were quite a few people from Qingping sword sect. Yu Aifu didn't take it seriously. She believed that Lu Yuzhou didn't have the guts either. As soon as Lu Suiyu left, in order to ease the embarrassment, Lu Yuzhou said boldly, Yu Aofu, my painting skills have skyrocketed recently. It is no exaggeration to say that I am not far from the realm of ecstasy. Let's go, I will show you a picture of sound brush and ink. Brilliant work. In fact, Lu Yuzhou has never been a sharp-edged person. Instead, he likes to be the green leaves to set off the red flowers. Only in painting he has a mysterious self-confidence. Yu Aifu hesitated for a moment, remembered a secret matter and said, I've seen the painting, let me tell you something. Lu Yuzhou asked curiously, what's the matter? Just say it directly and say it in advance. Except for borrowing money, I can't help you much. Aizhou Lu Gongzi is so straightforward and self-aware. Apart from having money and being good at painting, I don't have much merit as a person. Yu Aifu said, Gukan asked me to help you with a message. He needs to make a deal with you. Lu Yuzhou wondered, Gukan? He's not short of money, right? As the direct disciple of Mr. Zheng from Beidasheng, if Gukan was short of money, it would be a big joke. Yu Aofu nodded and said, he needs to buy a few things from your Aizhou Lu family. He knows that if he comes to the door and asks for a purchase, he will definitely fail. I hope you can do me a favor and make a bridge. Lu Yuzhou was speechless for a while. Indeed, if there is a monk, no matter who it is or what status he is, he says he is willing to pay high prices to buy rare treasures from Liu's and Aizhou. It is estimated that no one will believe it if it spreads out. Is it a fool? Lu Yuzhou thought for a moment, then nodded and said, this is a favor, help, I can give it a try. Yu Aifu smiled and asked, you didn't ask for anything? Lu Yuzhou smiled and said, then this deal is meaningless. Since it is to make Gukan owe her favor, it is better to be thorough and refreshing. Yu Aofu took out a piece of paper from his sleeve. This is a list. Lu Yuzhou took it and glanced at it. His scalp was numb and he frowned. He asked, what is Gukan doing? Are you going to start a new business and start a sect? Yu Yufu said in his heart, there will be 2 vassal sects in Baidi City at the same time. Fu Su and Gu can each occupy one. Their uncle Lu Daochun will follow Fu Su, and Aunt Han Qiaosa will assist Gu Kan. In addition, the entire Baidi City may be emptied, everyone will leave and each chooses to follow Fu Su or Gu Kan according to their wishes. In this way, Baidi City will become authentic. As for Fu Su and Gu Kan, the 2 brothers and sisters, who is the sect master of the upper sect and who is the sect master of the lower sect, it seems that it is not easy to say for the time being, listening to Gu Kan's tone. Therefore, Gu Kan, who is not short of money, will need to talk to you. Aizhou Lu. I bought the secret realms of those broken blessed lands. Lu Yu's thinking was rather strange and he asked a tricky question. So, is there only Mr. Zheng left in Baidi City? Yu Yufu nodded. It seems like you can say that. In fact, there are still some secrets which Gu Kan told her openly and honestly, but Yu Aofu couldn't tell Lu Yuzhou here. For example, the Golden Green City in the Wild World will be allocated to the sect where he is located. As for the location of the sect, Gu Kan has 3 choices: his hometown Aquarius Island, Fuyao Island, or the Wild World. Yu Aofu said, Gukin said that if you agree to help, I can continue to send you a message. He will set up a position of deputy suzerain, and I hope you can take the post. Gukin also promised that he can communicate with you. You agreed in advance that as long as you become the deputy sect master, you can take care of everything and you can take care of everything. In fact, Yu Aofu thinks that Gukin is thinking wrong and doesn't understand Lu Yu's temper at all. Otherwise, how could he think he would agree to such a filiac request? To be honest, Yu Aofu has seen quite a few monks and wealthy children on the mountain, and Lu Yuzhou is the only one who is so loose. To put it nicely, it means having no desires and desires. To say it badly, it means to have no ambitions, and just lie down and enjoy happiness among the rich and noble. But no matter what, it is certain that Lu Yuzhou is not a fool. Sure enough, Lu Yuzhou smiled and waved his hand. Yu Yufu looked strange and said, Gukin still has a gift for you. She took out a wooden box from what was close at hand. It was a treasure inlay process under the mountain. Countless gold and silver jewelry, coral jade, crystal agate, turquoise, ivory and beeswax are inlaid together to create landscapes, characters, flowers, trees, animals, birds, pavilions, lofts, palaces and palaces. The wooden box is not big, but it is colorful, which is indescribable. Lu Yuzhou smiled, took the wooden box inlaid with treasures and shook it gently. Say thanks to Gukan and say that I like this wooden box very much. Yu Aifu nodded and said, I will send a letter from Feijian to Gukan. He is now in Aquarius. The two sides chatted while walking, and when they arrived at the painting table in the side hall, there were more than a dozen painting and calligraphy cylinders on the table, filled with painting scrolls of different materials. Above the case, stall opening a picture scroll, Lu Yuzhou spent a golden belly with yellow eyebrows hanging upside down on a vine of the high-flying lily. Lu Yuzhou put the wooden box aside and said with a smile, Nowadays the art world is not good. In order to make money, counterfeiting is common. Of course, some people have difficulties. In order to support their families, they have to follow the trend. I must change this style. It's a crooked style. I just say that I have traveled all over the world over the years and I have seen countless murals, and now I am writing again, and I dare to say that I am young, and it already has the meaning of decaying years and reforms. If it's a shameless person, it's okay to brag about it over there. The problem is that Yu Aofu can be sure that when it comes to painting, Lu Yuzhou is very serious. Yu Aifu asked casually, since you have no talent, why do you still like to paint? Lu Yuzhou was stunned. Why don't you have talent? Thousands of years later, I can't say the style of this line. I am the originator of the mountain. Yu Yufu said angrily, tell me the truth. Lu Yuzhou smiled and said, this is the truth. But then again, I do have an idea. No matter how good or bad the painting is, it's nothing more than a fake. After Yu Aofu left, Lu Yuzhou held his cheek with one hand and stared blankly at the wooden box on the table. Lu Yuzhou has a very hidden hobby. He never mentioned it to anyone, not even with his parents. In the depths of Lu Yu's heart, there is a very special desire to control, that is absolutely harmless to others. To be precise, to visualize it is a configuration similar to Go. Allotment is the meaning of allocating and filling the vacancies, and setting aside means setting aside and setting up. Because he is the only candidate for the next head of the family of the Aizhou Lu family, Lu Yuzhou is not a fool, nor is he hypocritical, and he is foolish to return all the things he was born with. So how to allocate those things and money that are destined to be spent in several lifetimes has become Lu Yu's only schoolwork. It just so happens that he likes to do this by nature. He is notoriously extravagant and likes to borrow treasures the most. Lu Yuzhou enjoys the sense of accomplishment brought about by distribution and supplementation. Lu Yuzhou understood what Gukin meant. The sect of Gukin is a hollow wooden box. It is an empty shelf for the time being. Then, as long as Lu Yuzhou is willing to serve as the deputy suzerain, since Gukin promised to take care of everything, Lu Yuzhou can make various arrangements as he pleases. In the Lu family, Lu Yuzhou cannot do this, not to mention that his father has the hope of entering the 14th realm. Take a step back and say that even if his father resigns as the head of the family tomorrow, Lu Yuzhou will not be able to be a new head of the family. There are too many constraints. A huge family, there are too many trade-offs and sophistication. Lu Yuzhou admits that he is not good at dealing with these. His strengths and interests are just icing on the cake. Lu Yuzhou sighed, reached out and patted the wooden box. Gukin never masked but a confidant. A late-night snack stall on the side of the street. Yang Pu was burying his head in eating a casserole, and when he looked up he found a young man in white with a Chinese character sitting across the table. He ordered 2 casseroles directly from the stall owner in extremely skilled Yunyan Mandarin. Yang Pu didn't take it seriously and regarded the other party as someone from the capital or a chi practitioner. In fact, there were still 2 empty tables in the stall, but the other party chose to join the table, and Yang Pu didn't bother to care about anything. After all, he was a sage of the academy, so the other party couldn't possibly lift the table and cut people. But if you want to say that you know your identity through some channels on the mountain, and come to get close, the other party has really found the wrong person. In the past at Dafu Academy, Yang Pu had comments that he could only read dead books, was a nerd, was ignorant of world affairs and would not be flexible. He doesn't like that kind of staggered banquet and entertainment. I believe that in this capital just tonight, there are many cups and cups on the mountain and down the mountain. Although Yang Pu knows that many times the sophistication at the table is necessary and useful, and it can really bring closer the relationship, such as whoever gets together to make a familiar face, and who claims to be friends with the outside world, yes, really take the opportunity to make money. In the final analysis, it is to do what they like and get what they want. It's just that Yang Pu knows that he is not suitable for doing these things and he is not good at it. The young man on the opposite side puffed out his cheeks, blew hard, his eyes rolled and looked at Yang Pu carefully. When Yang Pu finished eating the casserole and even drank the soup at the bottom of the pot and was about to check out and leave, the young man said with a smile, "Brother Yang, let's go now. I have ordered more casserole for you, don't worry. Let's go, let's eat and talk." While speaking, the young man pushed the casserole towards Yang Pu, smiling and showing great hospitality. Yang Pu wondered, "You know me?" The young man nodded vigorously. "Yes, how could I not know Brother Yang? You and my husband are good friends at first sight and we made an appointment for a drink with our chief show." Yang Pu's heart moved slightly and he immediately said in his heart, "Are you a genealogy cultivator of Qingping sword sect? Or a student of Mr. Chen?" The young man's face was full of shock and his voice trembled slightly. "Could it be that Big Brother Yang can do fortune-telling? Can you guess this?" Yang Pu choked for a moment. Is this person really speaking ironically? Just seeing the other party's sincere expression, it didn't seem like he was joking and he would be a little unsure for a while. Yang Pu had to smile. "It's not particularly difficult to guess, right?" Earlier at the gate of Taiping Mountain, Yang Pu met Chen Pingon and Jiang Shangzhen. The key word in the other party's words is of course the chief show, who seems to be a secret language. Jiang Shangzhen of Jade Guzong, the old sect master of Jiang, is the chief worshipper of the Luopao Mountain in Aquarius Island in the north. This matter is not well known on Tonggishao Mountain now. As for Yang Pu's acquaintance with Chen Pingon and Jiang Shangzhen, he is not the kind of person who likes to talk about who he knows, so now in the entire Dafu Academy, there are only 3 senior and deputy mountain chiefs who know about it. Since the other party is Mr. Chen's disciple, Yang Pu generously moved the casserole over, picked up the chopsticks again, rolled a large chopsticks into his mouth and asked with a vague smile, "What's your name?" The young man smiled and said, "I'm a proud student of my husband. There's no such thing as one. My surname is Cui and my name is Dongshan. Big Brother Yang can call me Dongshan, but it's more cordial to call me Brother Cui." Now it was Yang Pu's turn to be shocked. Sect Master Cui? The Qingping sword sect was very powerful and attracted people's attention this time at the temporary establishment of the Zushi Hall. But Cui Dongshan did not show up in the capital. I never thought that I would meet this master of a sect whose identity, origin and realm are all cloudy and foggy at the night market. After all, there are only a few suzerains in Tongyeja, which is so big now. It can be counted on one hand. Youth patted his cheek with chopsticks. When you go out you have to keep a low profile, so you use some tricks to avoid getting slapped by flies, which is very annoying. Yang Pu said seriously, "I don't know if Sect Master Cui will see me tonight. What advice do you have?" As for the humorous statement about the fly, Yang Pu should not have heard it. Cui Dongshan sighed in a signature style of Wenxing. "Teach me a hammer. Brother Yang is an elder. I'm going out tonight to relax, just wandering around by myself. Just by chance I accidentally saw you on Tingyushi. Big Brother Yang is sitting here and my younger brother can just treat the guest once, so I can go back and take credit with Mr. Cui." Dongshan asked, "Brother Yang is good at compiling books or not?" After knowing the identity of the other party, Yang Pu seemed relaxed and more casual and joked, "As good as dealing with people. Compiling a series of books is a huge project and first of all, It is necessary to choose the best manuscript. 1 or 2 chief editors must take the lead, there are several editors, and the number of school clerks is extremely large. Let's just talk about this Yunyan country. The only feat in history that can be used to speak is that it once used the power of the whole country to call more than 3,000 officials, scholars and copywriters. It took 10 years to compile a book. A tome series that is well known across the continent. Cui Dongshan said regretfully, "Forget it, I originally wanted to bring big brother Yang to help my younger brother to be courageous and go see someone together." Yang Pu was at a loss, didn't break the casserole and asked the question to the end, only to see that sect master Cui stood up and said goodbye, and then walked away from the street, just walking. Not walking, jumping, shaking his head as if he was walking dodge and punch. Cui Dongshan walked straight out of the capital, neither walking against the wind nor taking out the ferry. The boy in white just dangled his sleeves, walked on foot, looked up at the white jade plate, his sleeves flew up. "Hey, hard work is the most pity in the sky, moon, meet you every night with you.